Hey everybody, this is Rydo and we're back to another live stream of Yu-Gi-Oh! Master Duel and video game news. Today is Wednesday, February 22nd. I am starting extremely late once again. My sleep schedule has just gotten really crazy, and my regular schedule has also gotten very crazy. So yeah, I was up at like 9 in the morning, but probably too sleepy to play there, and then I fell asleep and now it's 9 in the evening. Uh, Looks like they're going to make some slight changes again to limited and semi-limited, and a few cards are going to be lifted. I wonder if these adjustments are just echoing adjustments that were made in the trading card game tournaments in months, if not years past, where they have that forward experimentation that they would probably do. What am I trying to say here? Since we kind of know that there's about 10,000 cards in Yu-Gi-Oh! Trading card in the Japanese version of it, the game, and then there are minor adjustments for the Yu-Gi-Oh! In the rest of the world, Western version of the game, and they probably have had tournaments and real changes around all of that. I wonder if they're just kind of echoing that with every expansion. There are new cards, which changes the meta, which lets them make these changes. Because it would also be very weird if they were just making these changes specifically for Yu-Gi-Oh! Master Duel, and that's it. Although I guess in this case, the XYZ Festival has forbidden Flying Sea when it was unlimited before, so they figured out something was wrong with that. The XYZ Festival is happening right now, so yeah, we need to hop into that fairly well. But the good news is I did all of the other festival. Like, I made it all the way to get to the title. We might as well actually just straight up use that title since I did that. Right, let's first of all just collect everything, and then I'm gonna click so it moves fast. So now the only festival thing we have is to play 8 more games on XYZ Monster Festival. But yeah, I don't do this very often, but let's come up here, edit the title, and Legend Anthology 2023 is now an option. So we'll replace, I guess, Unfathomable there. Like, that's the maximum value, which is not much at all. I don't know why you get a purple with the Fusion Festival and only just a white with the Legend Anthology. I think maybe they experimented with colors and decided that was distracting. But yeah, that's the entirety of the value there. I don't think we got any title frame. We can do this. That would look a little bit nicer. And we can think about, I guess, icons. These probably are the newer icons that I've unlocked more recently. There isn't really even a Dark Magician icon. Oh, here's one. There we go. We can just go with very classic things there. Not that any of that matters. And knows how it had to connect to the network to even update that. So yeah, I just got really lucky playing this Unyielding Red Eyes, and if anything, this is a great example of perhaps forcing a lot of players into very limited sets of cards, making it much more doable to win, because you'll just run into a lot of later Yu-Gi-Oh players who don't want to potentially learn the basic concept of uh, Red Eyes, Black Dragon uh, decks. Which there were, it's not like it was a super basic deck. There was actually quite a few tricks that eventually I learned. But yeah, I got a lot of people who surrendered, a lot of disconnects, and was able to make it all the way up to the maximum. Now we have until the 27th, to get all the way up to 1100 medallions for this. And I'm not in a bad position either. By playing off screen, I've already made past the point of getting this mate base, and I only need like 2 losses and 2 victories, and then I will have all the gems, which that is perfectly fine. And then it is just gravy as far as getting legendary legacy packs, not legendary packs. And then if you're at 10,000, you might as well just play 2 more games and get another title. This time I'm playing with my Zodiac Tri-Brigade deck, but it's severely limited, so it's not really the best option. Noticeably too, I don't have anything available to go any further this way. Like the daily logins to get the ultra rare tickets doesn't seem like that's going any further. So yeah, seems to me like you could have only gotten 3 out of 8. Unless they're going to do something more as far as the first anniversary. It does say there's 53 days left, so maybe there would be some way to get this. Like, but it doesn't seem like there's a way to get the ultra rare things. Like, I would spend gems at the moment if I could to get the ultra rare things, but there's nothing available to purchase. Like, and that seems weird for a game that's trying to get you to potentially spend money, and finally they've created something that I would actually spend money on, and they don't let you spend the money on it, or at least use the premium currency, not actually spend real world money in my case. I mean, even if it was something that was in the shop, I guess I don't look in the shop, so let's see. How do you even get to the shop? Click here. It's so hidden. So yeah, this is like the real world shop, and maybe there's a bit of a sale going on right now, maybe not, but no special ultra rare packs. There's no special ultra rare packs in the Duel Pass. Can't craft ultra rare packs. So yeah, I'm confused. For YouTube's sake, let's just start with this deck and play this loner deck. We'll play each of these loner decks probably once, and then I'll just jump into the Zodiac Tri-Brigade deck that I've been playing, which was just a slight modification of my Zodiac Tri-Brigade deck, but a big enough modification that it really nullified most of the strategy of the Zodiac Tri-Brigade deck. So instead of being able to special summon characters that weren't XYZ summons, I am literally just eliminating cards from my deck to get to the Tri-Brigade cards that can be XYZ summoned. Um, for the accountability section today, I can say I am still playing Prey. Prey is in danger of wearing me out, and weirdly in danger of it's weirdly in danger of just like spoiling its surprise, which I already know the twist at the end, which like I don't think I wouldn't have guessed the twist at the end, even if I was completely like unaware of it, because halfway through the game they're kind of telling you the twist, so it's almost like the twist is in the middle, and they haven't laid enough foundation to potentially have you counter guess or have red herrings towards that twist. And the very beginning of the game reveals a twist almost obviously to hide the fact that that same twist is likely going to be revealed a second time. All of something like a dream within a dream. Plus, some of the characters talking to you kind of are coming heavy-handed. What's weird is that almost on every aspect, it feels like Prey is doing a worse job than Bioshock 1, using the CryEngine instead of, I believe, the Unreal Engine 3 for the original version of Bioshock 1, and being many years after the release of Bioshock 1. So that whole meme of can it run Crysis, I think probably just highlights that the CryEngine isn't actually that good. Like, which at a certain point, yeah, maybe that's why the meme exists, is because the CryEngine has always been unoptimized. But you also don't get a situation where Prey looks so amazingly good using the CryEngine that it can justify playing or having the exact same mechanics of a game that was probably 10 years earlier. There's not enough big personalities in Prey. Prey is very much more about you as the player and your personality. So you don't have an Andrew Ryan, you don't have an Atlas, and then the spaceship on Prey is definitely not anywhere close to Rapture. It's called Talos 1 Space Station, and yeah, it's just not as nicely decorated or as well set dressed, so you don't really fall in love with it as much. I'd say the enemies aren't as interesting. It's really shocking that there aren't more people who are that there aren't more like zombie-like creatures to fight on top of the mimics and the phantoms in Prey. It's kind of funny they made a movie called Prey. I guess Prey, it says it's a registered like trademark for probably only video games by Bethesda and Arcane Studios, but for a movie I imagine Prey probably couldn't even be registered, and it's too simplistic of a word, and there obviously is not any real connection between Prey the movie, which is a Predator series prequel, and Prey the video game, which is just its own standalone video game, in no way connected to Prey the video game that Arcane Studio made before. It's not even particularly the best name for the game, because once you get to the point where I've gotten, which I think is somewhere at 1/3 of the way through the game, then Like, you are pretty overpowered at that point. Although I am running out of bullets, which is turning to be fairly annoying. Like, I'm having to feed far too much resources into a recycler to then go to a crafter and use broken down material. And by using that broken down material in a crafter, you can craft bullets and other resources. That being said, it's a very slow process, and there are fewer crafters than there are recyclers. So there definitely are places where you're taking a lot of junk, which you find way too much junk in the game, and breaking it down into base smaller resources which take less inventory space, and then you're having to find a crafter somewhere else, very possibly an hour and a half to 2 hours later. I have found that the glue gun can be fairly effective against some of the smaller enemies that you start to see at the end of the first third of the game. But even that, if you've been saving up all of your glue from the beginning of the game, you might run out of glue. I recycled a significant amount of my glue because I thought I wasn't going to ever use it, and so now I'm out of even bullets for the glue gun, which, yeah, the gimmicks that they do start off with, using a glue gun and a pipe wrench, mimics being able to look like objects and then jump scare you, all of that I ignored and was uninterested in very early. Like, and you get a scope that's incredibly annoying. It changes the heads-up display. It makes a lot of visual noise, and it makes audio noise when you have it on. But you have this scope that can just identify most mimics. So the whole idea of the game being starting off as maybe a jump scare game where you just have a wrench and you're having to swing at coffee cups because the coffee cup might be a mimic. All of that kind of goes away halfway through the first act, I would say. It does. Let's see. I don't know how you could have maintained a game to be a horror game and jump scare game with the mimics. Very quickly they kind of had to throw a lot of extra. I should have put that in defense mode. They have to throw a lot of the really small mimics at you for it to even start to be a challenge. 4, 5, 6 in a room. Because if it is just one, unless you're totally out of bullets, you're totally capable of slowing down time with your survival mode, which you have at the beginning of the game, and just swinging a wrench at the enemy. And inherently, Prey is not doesn't feel as good as Bioshock 1 because it is slow and there's just a lot less running and gunning happening in it. On the other hand, I kind of do applaud the idea of just copying Bioshock. It should have happened a lot earlier than Prey, and setting it in space, so it's just trying to make a System Shock before they could make a System Shock remake or reboot, which they still have yet to really make a System Shock 1 remaster or reboot. I think if they did release a remaster, it came and went without me paying enough attention to it. but it's almost like they were too afraid to steal the best parts of BioShock, and so you're just not really getting as interesting of a story. Like the story in Prey is you're in this space station that's doing a bunch of shady corporate things, and you have some office workers who will send each other nasty emails, kind of like Deus Ex, which I think the emails even in Deus Ex Human Revolution was kind of boring. They've made less emails and there aren't as many repeated emails. There's almost no repeated emails that you do find, but it all just seems unnecessary. On top of the emails, there's also little pamphlets and books, and you don't really need to read any of those unless there happens to be a safe nearby, and then if there is a safe nearby, then there is a possibility that there's some number in the pamphlets or books or in the email that is the combination to the safe, because everybody is incredibly insecure with their computer passwords and their key cards and their codes to saves, and it is just a little environmental puzzles, many of which you can completely ignore if you just take the hacking skills and hack the safes open. It's a little surprising that the leverage skill that lets you lift more things and get stronger doesn't also let you potentially rip a safe open at its highest level, so that you wouldn't have to get hacking and leverage at the same time. There's a leverage skill that also creates a situation where there can be very heavy boxes or crates blocking a path, and you would think, well, that's the only thing you could possibly do to get through that area is to have a situation where you pick up the crates and move that way. But it isn't the only thing you can do, because the crates themselves can be converted into that recycled minimal material, which are these little cubes, if you have a specific grenade that they've made called the recycler grenade. So as long as you don't find that many recycler grenades, but as long as you have like 2 or 3 on you at all times, if you found a pathway that you couldn't access, just throw a recycler grenade right next to it. It'll suck up all the objects in the area, and that will almost certainly clear the path. I've also found places that are a little inaccessible, and I know the way to access that, but I don't want to go down the path of accessing it that way, because the game has warned me away from using those skills, because you get skills that just copy the enemy's skills. You're injecting enemy's DNA into you, the Typhon's DNA into you, so you could turn yourself into a coffee cup. And I think the game is really hoping that you do go down that path, but then also will punish you if you do that path, because then all of a sudden the turrets will start shooting at you thinking you're an enemy. So at some point I probably will have to take the morph skill, as it's called. But if you really didn't want to do that, and there very well is an achievement for not taking too many morph Typhon skills, or not taking any Typhon skills at all. If there is something like that, if there's an achievement though, you would have to know about it and almost certainly do it in a new game plus, or a fresh save file, because the game really does not want you to have 0 Typhon skills installed. But yeah, you can, if you want to just avoid that, you can do something similar by simply having recycling grenades near areas. There's also abilities often that you can cheat using other ways. Like, the general idea, I think, is that there should be at least 2 ways to get into every room, but I'm not sure there actually are 2 ways to get inside of every room, as much as there might be just some ways to sort of cheat it. So we've played all 3 of these XYZ decks. And like, so far I have not been able to XYZ summon anything of those 3 decks, just because I don't think I have enough interest in learning how you'd actually pull that off. Alright, 26, 21, 26, 20, 19, 19. Let's go with this guy. And then you have to wait till this guy reacts. Let's see what his ability. Let's activate his ability. Detach something. Special summon. Guess we'll take this one. So yeah, the amount of non-gameplay action mechanics in Prey in particular, I think, is kind of wearing me down. I'd almost be happier if the game was a little bit shorter. It does definitely also have this "we want you to play it twice" aspect. 21 is probably worth it if we could switch that out. So there's another XYZ summon. Bring that up to 23. And this guy's just taking forever to click forward. But yeah, that's I guess more than enough to talk about Prey so far. I also bought a smart sunrise, supposed to be sunset, alarm clock, one that would work with the Smart Life / Tuya interface. If anything, this is a device, the device I got did not really have a sunset feature as far as I could tell, and really didn't have very good options. This is the second device I've had in the Tuya setup that is just not even programmed. It just has functions that are not even translated from Chinese to English, and so I'm having to use Google Lens to even figure out what the functions say. So yeah, immediately I'm sending it back and getting a different one that was about twice the price. So yeah, I've suckered myself now into buying a Bluetooth speaker radio clock sunrise alarm clock that is about $60, which is something of insanity. Certainly that in modern 2023 you would pay $60 for a clock radio. It does have the one I did play with has a nice feature, had a nice feature in which it is connected to the internet, so it sets the time perfectly fine always, and even when it resets, it doesn't lose that time immediately. But it doesn't have a 12-hour clock. It was military time only. things to look for, I guess I've learned, is if it has a noise machine, how long are the noise clips? Because if it is repeating and very loopy, that's very noticeably that it is looping. That's not really going to work for most people. It's just going to get annoying. If the sunrise sunset light can be controlled separately, because that was definitely the problem, is I wanted it to set up a feature so it would sunset, slowly turn down an LED in the room, adjusting just my eyes to going to sleep, while leaving the audio exactly the same and alone. And instead it just kind of has this off mode where it turns both the audio and the light off at the same time. I could even see an argument for the audio slowly going down at the same rate as the brightness and the light, but even that could be fairly annoying, because if you start to struggle to hear something, that would potentially make me more alert, not more lulled into being asleep. Even though it is supposed to be all about calming sound effects and waking you up calmly, it needs to have a beep 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 annoying alarm clock. Like, everybody just expects that would be a feature, and of the one I got, there was they said like 15 melodies for wake up alarms, and they are just the exact same noise machine melodies, and one of them is not actually a melody at all, it's just no sound. Which creates another problem, is if you made a timer with it, you can't have don't change the sound from what it is, you can only have turn it off as no sound. So just missing features all over the place. It's just, you didn't think this through at all. Now, as late as even a year ago, I was thinking I potentially was going to do a project where I made internet connected alarm clocks, things that had a lot of features. There's definitely room for a lot of features where a parent could potentially control through Wi-Fi their teenage children's alarm clock, set the time to wake them up, get a notification if they snooze, things like that. And yeah, with the new one that I've ordered, I'm hoping that most, if not all of that, can be done. But this is a problem certainly with Tuya devices, is that you're on the edge of technology. There's a lot of cheap Chinese product developers that don't know how to program, don't care to program. These are the kinds of things that might be bought in a flea market or mall, and then the salesman would disappear. So for the XYZ Festival, this deck is not exactly the same as Zodiac Tri-Brigade. And so, me sending this guy to the graveyard normally would let me send some other characters to the graveyard, but like this here, special summon a Beast, Beast Warrior, or Winged Beast, won't ever work. For some reason, sometimes this will let me XYZ summon, and this won't. So I'm gonna do this instead. I've added more XYZ guys, but I don't know if this guy actually does anything different. So basically what you want to do here is just get as many XYZs as possible, and honestly I don't even need to do that, because the festival quest as far as XYZ summoning things I've already accomplished that. So it would make a lot more sense to simply jump to one of these guys. Just do one XYZ. Go into battle mode. Attack directly. Go over here. And the only reason why you would do this now is so you can have more things stacked later. So yeah, now I have 6 things stacked. That means I can activate his effect 3 times, detaching 2 materials. Which I'm not sure I even need to do that much, because this guy's helped me along so well as far as reducing his own health in half. So yeah, you can get fancy and wait for some of these to activate to see what happens, but better just to go ahead and activate it now. Alright, let's start going through video game news. So, like, Warner Brothers, Twitter, let you're still following Twitter. Here, let's come over here and activate this effect again. Just give him no chance of success. There's 500, couple of cards being received. Even when you click on it, you have to click on it a second time to actually see what cards you're getting. Oh, it'd be nice if I was getting better cards from these rewards when you do get cards. And so yeah, I literally need one more victory and then I'll get all the gems on this festival. And then that will potentially give me 5 days in which I can focus less on Yu-Gi-Oh! After, if I get everything done fairly early. And maybe get back to gameplay. So yeah, Hogwarts Legacy still very popular, being very well received by those who want to give it a fair shake, and people being harassed for playing the game by anti-J.K. Rowling, anti-fans, I guess. What's funny about this is it shows a kind of lack of effective attack strategy. Like, regardless if you're somehow pro Harry Potter, I don't know if there's too many people that are just super pro J.K. Rowling. I imagine that there are people who saw one thing she said and agreed with her, but I don't think there's anybody that straight up is making arguments that they agree 100% with what she says always. Like, hopefully nobody is that much of a blind follower. That being said, that we certainly have seen that with other people, where people just make it their whole personality to support somebody else and agree with them completely. But yeah, once you tried a cancel attempt at J.K. Rowling and it doesn't stick, then unless she says something completely different on a different topic, you probably can't just keep on pushing it. You can, obviously, and that's exactly what they're doing. They're pushing the same idea that J.K. Rowling needs to be canceled. They've been pushing it for years, and they've been incredibly unsuccessful with it. So if you're just failing over and over again to win the hearts and minds of people over, and you've now just evolved into straight up harassing streamers and for playing a video game around Harry Potter. Is that what winning looks like to that side? It shouldn't be what winning looks like. It doesn't look like winning from the outside. They should move on. Like, there's almost certainly a good number of sportscasters and radio hosts and people who are very small that don't have as much name recognition that you could potentially try to sway to your side or cancel if all you are about is canceling people. Going for smaller targets, easier fish to catch would work. Even if you're going to do like a massive document of here's 100 people in the NFL that shouldn't be working in the NFL, should be canceled. Like, that would potentially work better. Just doing something different at all would work better than just going after J.K. Rowling, because like every time she's not getting canceled, she's just getting a stronger and stronger foundation of supporters. But that's not even what I wanted to talk about. But I imagine they are somewhat trying to move away from Hogwarts Legacy by putting out or retweeting Black History Month way too late. So if I now can take the side of people who are pro cancel culture, I would say perhaps there is room to complain, and this is a failure of PR, to 6 hours ago on the 22nd of February put out a Mortal Kombat Mobile Happy Black History Month tweet. Here, same is true for DC Universe or Injustice 2 Mobile. It's a major failure. Like, if you're going with a Black History Month, then you needed to really put out more of those tweets at the beginning of February 1st, 2nd. Not wait till the very end. Here I'm scrolling down Warner Brothers retweets, and you can see, actually need to play too. You can see there's a lot of talk of Mortal Kombat and other Warner Brother properties. There's Valentine's Day on the 14th, but honestly, if it's going to be Black History Month, you have to start before Valentine's Day, then have Valentine's tweets around the 14th, and then you've got to do more Black History around it. It's got to be just a full-on sandwich. You can see they definitely are talking a lot about Harry Potter. Notably, Harry Potter Legacy, not really showing a lot of dark-skinned characters. I don't know if there's any in the game that is a named character at all. You may be able to customize your skin tones, but I'd imagine that may be it. Alright. So, let's start with this. You'd think that this, like, ultimate defense would hurt me, but honestly, I don't think it is going to. So that stops that effect. That allows this effect. That clears that card. We place this here. And then, unless he can stop me from XYZ summoning, I am golden. The main trick here, though, is to end up with the Borbo character. We don't want to destroy each of these face-up cards. That would be inefficient with the trident. Have to pay attention too much, obviously, when you're playing Yu-Gi-Oh! And doing all this XYZ summoning. Interesting. It's not letting me summon the other guy. Well, I may be doomed here then. It didn't let me summon Zeus. But see, here you have a dark-skinned presenter doing a sponsored content for Hogwarts Legacy. And this was February 10th, and they don't even mention even like a hashtag Black History Month, because they're so focused on Hogwarts and Hogwarts only. They didn't release anything that could be considered Black History Month related content. Here they're talking about Valentine's Day again. It's just really shallow to say the entire month is Black History Month. At a certain level, you might as well just go back to saying, hey, let's just celebrate Martin Luther King Jr. Day and say we don't celebrate Black History Month because we don't feel like we just don't feel like doing it, or we feel like they've just expanded Martin Luther King Jr. Day into a Black History Month. They were able to defeat me. I could have won had I been able to summon Zeus, but obviously they had a card blocking me from doing that. And I don't know which card it was, and I don't particularly care. It feels like to me, particularly in the Harry Potter's universe, there probably should be an African school like Hogwarts that is either in, like, it would make a lot of sense if it would be in the Middle East. Egypt is technically Africa, but that would definitely have that magical feel to it. It would also make a lot of sense that there would be one somewhere in southern or western Africa. It also, frankly, would just make a lot of sense that there would be African or dark-skinned characters at Hogwarts anyways, because let's face it, England has plenty of African characters. I don't know if that's playing for you. Like, here's a character that maybe is African in the background, but they don't even show the face of him, and that's February 6th. Yeah. So yeah, the back of a head with some curly hair and maybe some dark skin, if is hardly enough to call it a celebration, though, towards a African American Black History Month. Let's set this and start doing this. Now, in this case, I actually can activate an effect, so I think I do want to do that. Unless I'm just totally wrong here. Is February not Black History Month? Is March Black History Month? And they're moving ahead of schedule? I don't think so. I'm almost 100% certain that's not the case. So much work. That's why scripting this would be so nice. Seemingly, though, you can't XYZ summon anything on this. But yeah, I'm giving Warner Brother Games all the opportunity in the world to prove me wrong here. Just going down on their entire Twitter thing. Here's that same character. Definitely seems like at the beginning of the month they tried to make this seem like this was a major character or the focus, but they really didn't do a great job, because very quickly you started to see a pale-skinned female character as a playable character. You customize what your character looks like. All the professors and teachers definitely look pale-skinned too, like as you would typically expect from any English white person. Like, they started kind of with this guy who's maybe a little bit darker skinned on the first. If anything, this is very possibly a great example of how there is just a lot of racism. And we won't go any further past March. But yeah, there is a lot of racism outside of just like the United States and outside of the West in general, where even I would say more mixed-skinned, like light dark-skinned character just is not as well received. And so very quickly they took this video and they reshot it from a dark-skinned male character. They did some A/B testing and said, oh, people aren't receiving that well, so let's then replace it with a very light-skinned female character. Exact same picture. And this time they took it just a screenshot. And it's hard to not take it that way. It's hard not to assume that they got some kind of feedback. In all fairness, they did pin that original tweet probably because it had a certain number of views, and it has been pinned the whole month. So yeah, this is certainly the problem with slacktivism, though. There's just a low effort number of images that were made where there was no announcements from WB that they were actually donating anything to any charities, or that they were proud of the number of like black people that they employed, which I bet at WB isn't 20% or a reasonable representative proportion. They aren't highlighting their own employees that are of African American descent. So they're not really doing anything other than making a picture. So then you have to evaluate what is the value and the accuracy of these tweet pictures. And at that, I have some questions, certainly. Because certainly, to my memory, as far as Mortal Kombat, Jax has always been an African American guy. I don't know who this character is supposed to be. This must be a new character. I don't know who this character is supposed to be. This must be a newer character. And by newer, I mean something past Mortal Kombat 2. But then you start to get to this character, and if this is the character I'm thinking of, I felt like originally in Mortal Kombat 2 she was probably not black. And it kind of doesn't matter because she's not human. Like, she's a monster alien. And when you take off the face, it's like a big, like, reptile monster face. So, dark-skinned aliens I don't think really should be considered black. Then when you get back to the same logic and you look at this character and you see glowing eyes, I think that probably puts her as some kind of elemental or god, which again just does not have that cultural history. It's not just the color or the amount of melanin that might be in one's skin that should be celebrated. Otherwise, extremely sunburnt, tanned people would be considered acceptable to call themselves black, and that's totally not the case. So if you were going to do this, you probably needed to say Earth Realm only, humans only, black people in the screenshot. So you take that same logic to this image. Well, you have a Green Lantern from Earth that is African American, I believe. So that's fine. You have Black Bolt, he's fine. You have, this is probably Chitara. I think she's a human. She might be from Wakanda. That's fine. Now, I don't recall there ever being a Black Firestorm character, but okay. But then your centerpiece guy is Hawkman. Hawkman again being an alien in most of his iterations. So, like, I don't think there's ever been a Hawkman character who was human and then became Hawkman, but maybe. So, percentage-wise, they're definitely doing a lot better on this one as far as humans that would have grown up in some kind of African-American black history of some sort. Arguably, if this character is from, like, Wakanda, living in Wakanda, growing up in Wakanda, is not anywhere as much of a real-world experience as living in America, the United States, and growing up in the United States. Yeah, and it almost certainly would be, for lack of a better term, reverse racism in Wakanda, where any albino or light-skinned character is getting looked down upon, which some of that does happen. They straight up like kill albinos in Africa because there's voodoo nonsense about their bones or their blood curing diseases or correcting erectile dysfunction or something like that. I think it's cures ED, like the dumbest reason to hunt down and kill albinos. And not even albinos, though. There is also just a lot of reverse racism. Perhaps some of it understandable, I won't say justified, in South Africa, where you have people like Elon Musk and his father, like, becoming incredibly rich and creating a second-class apartheid state. I don't think we can directly blame that on Elon Musk or his father, but he was definitely part of that disconnect in South Africa. Hey, well, that was a long ramble, but worth mentioning, too. On the other hand, though, we also have to say at least Warner Brothers retweeted something. That's basically the only video game company that has tweeted anything for me to even comment on. Which arguably maybe is the smarter move. Maybe you just don't have your PR team try to get a cheap pop around Black History Month if you don't care and if you aren't actually going to donate money or actually do anything to actually support a cause. Maybe you just don't cover holidays at all. Easter is somewhere around the bend here. You almost see nothing from as far as Easter around video games, because it just does not it doesn't mesh well with video games. I could even like Christmas, very few video games even try to get cheap pops from Christmas, which arguably Christmas is the most capitalistic holiday of the year, and video games are most about selling video games and being capitalistic. So, but if you're going to go that route and just say we're not going to celebrate any holidays, which is super safe, super easy, totally the right move, then you can't have your Twitter manager also be a flaming SJW and then put up trans pride flags or Black Lives Matter flags when those events happen or when you want to celebrate those things. Part of the reason why more conservative people say that there is a LGBTQ plus agenda is because there are definitely some people with that agenda that only push that agenda and don't support anything that's even slightly in parallel. And if you are truly about being progressive and accepting everybody, you would support each thing equally. Moving on, Cyan put out, well, Riven is officially in development at Cyan. That was a while ago. But they put out this game called The Last Clockwinder for PlayStation VR 2, and they retweeted it. Well, I guess maybe they didn't publish it at all, but they retweeted this. And so, yeah, it looks like it's kind of a weird VR game. I don't know what specific character you would play there as far as a VR game of the year. This was probably an older VR game that is getting in a PlayStation VR 2 upgrade. Yeah, it seems like it's a VR factorial basically, and you make an action, and then the robot you're inhabiting does that action over and over again, and so you're creating a sequence of events. Yeah, it's a somewhat interesting idea. But honestly, it doesn't look like it plays particularly well, this game, The Last Clockwinder. Seems like it would be kind of rough to play in VR, and there doesn't really have any reason why you would play it in VR. I do make a special exception to talk about and follow Cyan tweets, because they do tend to point towards more Myst-like games and weird games, and talk about Myst and Riven. Just go ahead and activate an effect here. We're just doing this because we can, like, just in case there's a lifetime goal for activating traps. It is late though, and I think we should probably stop playing here. Like, I definitely have more gas in my engine where I could certainly play more. And I might even play more off screen later in the evening, but to get through the news fairly quickly, I think it makes a lot of sense to stop here. So that was the last couple of games for the festival we needed to do. And then as far as daily quests, fusion summoning, pendulum and link summoning, and destroying cards. Destroying cards might actually be somewhat hard to do. I could do that in ranked. As far as lifetime progress, yeah. Gain extra life points, take control of your opponents, banish your opponent's cards, Yeah. Activate a trap card. Here we go. So yeah, we are still like 1600 activations around the trap card before we would have no more reason to activate trap cards for no reason. Looks to me like we've already done anything that activates a spell card, but if I was going to get some of these lifetime things done, I almost need a new deck that is severely focused around destroying cards and banishing cards. Alright. Bind Studio put out this thing, and I don't know why it's specifically Bind Studio that's putting out this announcement that on this day 11 years ago Uncharted came out, or Drake Uncharted Golden Abyss launched for the PlayStation Vita. So it's an anniversary for a Vita spin-off of Uncharted, which I guess just got retweeted. It's a weird thing, certainly, though. You're in this weird position where they've already said they've given up on Uncharted, at least the main developers of Uncharted. Sony seems very much uninterested in doing Uncharted material anymore. So any third-party company that made a spin-off game is just really in a bad position. I put my keyboard too far away from me. Yep, ever since I moved my chair, I am in just this weird situation now. There we go. Turn on the blur. So yeah, you definitely, as a game developer, want to be able to make your own properties and a game that you could just promote forever, and not potentially have a game only 11 years. Only is the right word here. Only 11 years old, and you can't likely make a remaster or remake of this game. It's on the Vita. A re-release on the Switch would make a lot of sense. I've never even heard of this game before, so it probably wasn't even that good. I imagine it's something like the Tomb Raider mobile game. But yeah, that is a real shame. Of course, if you are a third-party company, you take all the work you can get, and you just hope that leads to you eventually having enough funds to make your own launch debut title. And as a third-party company, you very possibly could have employees working for a decade or longer before you get ambitious enough to make a launch debut title. There's this GameDeveloper.com article that caught my attention where apparently Baba Is You creator has created a spin-off game called Baba Files Taxes. It is a free itch release for Windows PC, which seems weird, and it seems to be the idea of fraudulently doing your taxes and doing tax fraud as kind of a spin-off joke game. If anything, the visuals here feel very reminiscent of the Binding of Isaac without running into the problems of the Binding of Isaac with its heavy dark themes of child abuse and anti-Christian themes or devil worship themes. Right, let's see what this next one was. Nope. That's not video game related. This is video game related. Video Games Chronicle has announced that they're going to do a podcast, which is going to include StackPod, the home of football ramble abroad in Japan and more. Like, I don't know any of the personalities around Video Games Chronicles, and honestly, I don't think that there's a lot of reason to know the personalities who listen to a podcast. Inherently, I guess this is just the next step that people think they should take as being a website that publishes video game news, which is a dumb step. I mean, even in the screenshot, you can see that here is somebody doing the video game nerd thing. Here is somebody just holding up a PlayStation controller and trying to look cool and smug. And then here's a kind of nerdy guy that's smirking a little bit, but not really trying to look as cool as this guy, where this guy's looking super nerdy. So each picture trying to imply some personalities around people who very possibly have no personalities at all, or more likely are not going to have any personalities that you care about or want to listen to. Even in its heyday, the Giant Bombcast ran an incredibly high risk of having somebody on those presentations on the Bombcasts say enough things to irritate their audience and lose fans. It is almost certainly a loser's game where you can have a pretty good push at the beginning, but eventually it is only going to be maintaining and diminishing returns as far as a fandom. And I'm not immune to that either as a YouTube content creator, and these live streams are very close to podcasts, I would say, and almost certainly there are a percentage of people that don't like these streams and don't like what I'm saying and get irritated and leave. Most of the time they leave quietly. Sometimes they leave very loudly. So yeah, particularly when I think about like my YouTube shorts, where I'm not even adding my own voice to it, that is such an incredibly safe, automated process that the only way somebody could be pissed off by the YouTube shorts is either it's flooding their shorts feeds, or they just generally hate shorts overall, or they hate my taste as far as the minor curation that I'm doing as far as making YouTube shorts. But none of that is so influential that I think it would scare off people who initially liked the idea of the YouTube shorts. That I could see some burnout eventually happening if you're looking at 2 or 3 games every day. But if I was, say, making shorts where I was talking about each game and saying this game looks like garbage, this game is awful, those are not the games that tend to get shorts anyway, so I'd have to start to try to figure out ways of hyping up and selling the game, and I could see that becoming very annoying, and it would definitely take a lot more work. Okay, I still have yet to look at my macro, so we still are getting repeated Video Games Chronicle articles here. So we've already talked about this a couple times with Fireaxe, seeing the director and studio head exiting, new Sid Meier's game in development, them 2K insisting Jake Sullivan's departure was on good terms, Tencent reportedly scrapping its own VR plans, Hogwarts Legacy patches out, Hogwarts Legacy not currently developing, planning to make DLC. The Kenny Omega saying AEW Fight Forever being delayed because of the real world fight that happened between, I think, Kenny Omega and a group of people and CM Punk, I believe it was. Yeah. Lego issued copyright strikes for videos featuring leaked Zelda Lego sets. Still haven't heard any real announcement as far as the Lego Zelda set. Lego is doing something very weird right now, and it's not too much video game related, is that they've announced basically a Lego Ideas set, but I think they've gotten rid of the title of Lego Ideas. That is around BTS, the Korean pop song group, and one of their songs, I think, called Dynamite. But there might actually be two sets, one around a song called Dynamite and one around a song called Donut. There is a donut shop in the set I saw, so that one may very well be Dynamite. The set does not look particularly good. It doesn't feel like a really good play set. You are getting minifigs that look like the BTS fans, or not the fans, the BTS performers, singers, members of BTS. But the set itself just kind of has some generic concepts of areas that are shown in that music video. And the idea of making a Lego set around a music video in the first place is kind of crazy. It almost certainly will sell very well amongst fans of BTS, and I know there's a lot of people like that. But it is a very weird direction for Lego to go. At a certain point, I could almost agree with it, though. Like licensing something outside of Nintendo, outside of the things they've licensed before, Star Wars in particular would be their main one. Like them going in a different direction and working with several different companies gives them more flexibility in case Nintendo pulled out or Star Wars pulled out. The Lego has in the past been big failures around, like the Legends of Chima, I think, was one of their failed series, and even Lego Friends, while it does seem like it's somewhat successful, I don't know if they're super focused on Lego Friends that much anymore, and they've kind of changed what Lego Friends was to make it more compatible with just regular Lego sets. Their most recent Let's Make Music video project failed pretty badly, so I wouldn't be surprised if BTS was going to be in that music video maker set series. I'm also, of course, in a weird position, certainly as far as Lego, in that I just have far too much Lego and am not staying awake enough to put the Lego sets together. Diablo 4's beta begins in March. We talked about that before. The pre-order people getting early access to a beta, which is just also a beta. Returnal looks to be at a slow start. I think I saw somewhere like just under 7,000 concurrent players. Not a lot of people playing it. Tears of the Kingdom leaks seem to emerge from the official art book. None of the pictures are actually being shown in this article. Tesco selling some games at very low prices. If you're in the UK, UK games revenue declined in 2022. The next Capcom Cup award will be $1 million to the winner, or £1 million, I'm not sure. Last of Us Episode 7. Miyamoto is always working on Mario, but isn't ready to share anything yet. Microsoft raised the Xbox Series X and S console prices in Sweden. Assassin's Creed Valhalla is getting a final big bug fix update this week. For the King 2 trailer shows off some of its sequel new features. And then the $550 emulation console Polymega is getting a free app version with optional paid subscription with cloud access. And so that was all the old news. The new news is that Microsoft announced this legally binding 10-year deal to bring Call of Duty to Nintendo platforms. Just a day before they were supposed to talk before the EU Here it says the announcement coincides with Tuesday's EU hearing. Today is Wednesday. We didn't get any fallout from that hearing. I imagine that was a closed door hearing, and if somebody was going to leak what was happening there, what was said, it may take a while. Probably not too much was really said. This is an interesting thought, certainly, because Microsoft would not really be able to be legally bound to bring Call of Duty to Nintendo if the Activision Blizzard merger doesn't go through. So I imagine at that point there is a clause that says, well, if this merger doesn't go through, everything is null and void. Because, like, how in the world could Microsoft bring a game they don't own to Nintendo for 10 years? And it says Nintendo platforms, not particularly the Switch. A lot of people probably misreporting this as saying a 10-year deal to bring Call of Duty to the Switch. Which, even now, I would question if Call of Duty could go to the Switch and run well. It's almost certainly all going to be cloud-based. Microsoft has gone heavily into cloud streaming and cloud services in general. So I think this is definitely what they're really planning on doing. Microsoft, I mean, maybe in the first couple of weeks when this whole Call of Duty aspect was brought up, argument was brought up, people may have thought that Microsoft really was going for a Call of Duty exclusivity, but pretty much as soon as Sony brought that up as the big boogeyman that everybody should be afraid of, is you couldn't play Call of Duty on the PlayStation, they backed down from that and said, nope, we never wanted it to be a console exclusive. I wouldn't be surprised if 20, 30 years down the line they're still making Call of Duty games and putting them on other consoles. I don't think that's what Microsoft wants to do at all. Microsoft just wants to own the entire license of all games, and they could certainly make every other Activision Blizzard game exclusive to the Xbox and do just as well as making Call of Duty exclusive to the Xbox. But if anything, I think they want to own the licenses, and they want to own the some of the people. They probably don't want to own all the people in Activision Blizzard. I'm not sure they really want to own any of us. I still heavily, tinfoil hat theory, think that Microsoft may own shares in Activision Blizzard, and this is literally just corporate protectionism, where they're trying to protect the CEO of Activision Blizzard, or they're trying to protect their own investments into Activision Blizzard. Which maybe that is how you make a big company or even a medium-sized company less likely to fail, is that you then convince bigger companies to buy shares in your company, and then you've got this strange bedfellows situation in which Microsoft has to bend over backwards and get a lot of kind of bad press. I mean, Microsoft isn't getting great press with each of these stories. Just to acquire a company that, if it weren't for the licensed games, wouldn't be worth acquiring. If Activision Blizzard did not own Hearthstone, Diablo, World of Warcraft, things like that, I wouldn't be surprised if Microsoft is actually fairly interested in World of Warcraft, because World of Warcraft on Microsoft servers on multiple platforms and consoles could be a major improvement and bring back a lot of players. But yeah, almost as a publicity stunt, Microsoft has made a legally binding contract, which is really just a follow-up on a story that had happened several weeks, if not a month or two ago, where Nintendo had already agreed on a 10-year deal. And I wouldn't be surprised if at some level Activision Blizzard and Microsoft had tried to offer the same deal to Sony, and Sony seems to want to just fight the acquisition completely. which I don't think Sony is going to succeed at, nor do I think Sony is just fighting it to cost Microsoft and Activision money or time. I don't think that's very helpful either. I wouldn't put it past Activision Blizzard to potentially make a resolution and a statement saying, if the merger doesn't go through, we're going to stop selling our games on the PlayStation anyways. Like, so far, it's been very much carrots saying, of course we're going to bring Call of Duty to the PlayStation. Nothing particularly stops Activision Blizzard and Bobby Kotick to say, actually, we want this merger to go through. The shareholders have voted on this non-binding resolution to say they want the merger to go through. And if it doesn't go through, we've also voted and agreed to hurt ourselves and not sell games on the PlayStation if it fails. I don't think any regulation or anything could really stop Activision Blizzard from agreeing to some kind of exclusivity with Microsoft if the merger doesn't go through. Which, yeah, if the merger doesn't go through, I wouldn't be surprised if legally Microsoft and Activision Blizzard are separate, but in their actions they are colliding and colluding as much as possible. Let's see. Here's another anniversary with no real fanfare. The Star Fox developers celebrate the series' 30th anniversary, an anniversary ending in a 0, and nothing happening. Like, no new announcement from Nintendo. Just have this little cake, little fruit cake. This feels definitely like this is probably a Japanese idea of let's have a cake, because fruit is incredibly expensive in Japan. So while this probably in the United States would have been $30 to $60 cake, you've got the special decoration. Maybe that would even bump it up to $100. I wouldn't be surprised if this is a $300 or $400 cake, being fairly small with all the fruits on it, fresh fruits. Although it may not be that expensive. It's expensive, I've heard, in Japan to buy fresh fruit as an individual. It may not be that expensive to buy it if you are a cake confectionery. As far as how that connects to video games, though, I mean, it's just yet another sad reminder of yet another series that Nintendo just does not care about. Star Fox did get re-released already on the eShop, so I mean, it could have been on sale for the anniversary. But it really deserves Star Fox 1 remake. Really would make a lot of sense. A Star Fox 64 remake would make a lot of sense. A reboot of the whole series would make a lot of sense. There's been enough time. It's not like there even is an on-rail shooter that has replaced Star Fox, so there's just this gap in which Nintendo doesn't have an on-rail shooter concept. You could also try to tie it into Splatoon. There could have been some special DLC where you have a special event or a side game with the Splatoon characters. You could have Star Fox characters show up in the Splatoon world, and then all of a sudden you could recontextualize the idea that everything that happens in the Star Fox universe actually is like hundreds if not thousands of years in the future from the Mario 64 universe, and then everything is interconnected. But yeah, a squid kid or two flying around in space, shooting space guns, even if it's just space paintball guns, would have been a funny side game, or would have been a way to potentially reboot the entire series. But yeah, unfortunately, Nintendo doesn't care. And in part, it also just highlights that Nintendo is not as much a video game company as They pretend they are. They they don't have that many people to put on projects. They've never really scaled up to say, hey, let's acquire a company or two so we can make more games. They are almost the exact opposite of what Microsoft is doing now, in that Nintendo's just been around for 100 plus years, if not longer, much longer, and they've been able to manage to just make their 3 or 4 main title games, most of which I think are done by actual third-party developers, where Nintendo, when the Wii was super popular, when the Nintendo 64 GameCube was super popular, could have been promoting and licensing a lot of third-party developers to make a lot more games. And even in the past, they have done that, and they're just slow now. Really, really slow. And some of that probably has to do with the Switch being too weak to actually make modern games. But yeah, they're really, really not doing a great job of making games. I also heard it's kind of hard at the moment to find the physical copies of the Metroid Prime remake. With the release of the Metroid Prime remake, that would have been a great time to say, actually, we are going to start development on a Star Fox remake, or even remaster of Star Fox 1. But remaster is probably not enough. Moving on, Destiny 2 Cheater has been ordered to pay Bungie $4.3 million in damages. Aim Junkies has been found to have violated the DMCA by bypassing Bungie's protection measures. Which, yeah, the way the DMCA is written, I don't think you can bypass encryption or any kind of protection measures, anti-circumvention provision, unless it's in a very, very narrow reason. Like, maybe you can do that for educational reasons. You can bypass DRM, but I don't think any judge was going to look friendly on the idea of people making cheats and then selling the cheats, which I think is what Aim Junkie was doing. Now, the way the court system works is Aim Junkies now has a order of 4.3 million against them, and you usually can't go bankrupt to get that order dismissed, but that kind of collection order doesn't really mean Destiny 2 is going to get that. All they can do is like garnish the wages of people to a certain percentage, and if they find the people actually do have cash, they can try and collect it. But basically they're just going to be in debt collection forever, and Bungie, I imagine, doesn't want to be in the business of paying their lawyers to try to collect the debt. So I wouldn't be surprised if, for pennies on the dollar, Bungie sells this debt fairly quickly. You might try to keep it around just for punitive, punishing reasons, but I think they got what they wanted by getting the judgment and the headline more than anything. And yeah, they may find that Aim Junkies has an office where they can seize all the assets of the office and auction all of that off, and they can seize their bank accounts and get whatever money is there, and that might take it from 4.3 million down to 4 million, would be my guess at most. And then they would probably sell the debt of the rest of the 4 million to a collection agency for pennies on the dollar, and see whatever money they could get off that debt that almost certainly would never get paid. You definitely don't want a judgment like this on you, though, because it potentially just ruins your life forever and creates a emotional debtor's prison, if not a physical, instead of a physical debtor's prison. But then again, also, you tend not to get 4 million damage settlements against you unless you are doing something fairly crazy. On the other hand, like, I could see a company thinking to themselves, hey, we're making a product that people want. We're just doing the same old capitalism thing everybody else is. We're selling a product that we worked hard to make. We deserve to be rewarded. And unfortunately, the DMCA and laws like the DMCA exist to protect the big business against the small business. And I could definitely see arguments to say maybe there shouldn't be this extra protection against for a big business when all they're really doing is making software to let cheaters cheat. Arguably, it would be a nicer world if Destiny 2 just had to, or the Destiny developers just had to create anti-cheat detection measures and kick people who are cheating, and couldn't just take the easy route of suing the cheat maker. But it's kind of hard to defend the cheat maker as a gamer. Moving on, the new Tekken 8 gameplay trailer shows Kazuya in action. Check that out if you're interested. Pokemon Presents will return next week. Classic Pokemon titles are released. A new mystery dungeon game could also be announced. Pokemon Presents, I guess, are Nintendo Directs specifically focused around Pokemon and very possibly not directly run by Nintendo themselves, instead being run by the Pokemon Company, which Nintendo owns about a third of, if I recall correctly. Apparently there's some copyright information saying Spike Chunsoft, the developer of Pokemon Mystery Dungeon, was found on the new Pokemon website. So yeah, we next week may have something to say about Pokemon games, but at the moment we really don't have anything, so this is really just an announcement for an announcement. New Xbox Game Pass titles for console and PC and cloud have been dated. Let's see, do we have the full list? Alien Isolation on February 28th. It comes out for console and PC. Crown Trick for cloud, console and PC. Dragon Ball FighterZ, cloud, console and PC. Probably not with all the DLC though, I would assume. Far Changing Tides for cloud, console and PC. Lightning Returns, Final Fantasy VIII for console and PC. Madden 21 for console and PC via EA Play. And then Octopath Traveler for cloud, console and PC. Now notably here though, on this list, they are not mentioning Atomic Heart for cloud, console and PC at the top here, or F122 for console and PC on March 2nd. So now Atomic Heart is in this weird situation where also I guess Wulong Fallen Dynasty, Soul Hackers 2 and Margin Blade somewhere are listed in this whole mess of an article that's not giving you the information in a consistently formatted manner. Atomic Heart's in this weird position. Ukraine has said that they're going to ask everybody, Nintendo, Microsoft, and Sony, to not sell Atomic Heart because it has ties to the Russian government, in the sense, as far as I can tell, that it's a Russian company putting money into a Russian bank and paying Russian taxes. So, like, I think that's pretty much the only ties. I have not seen anybody do any real investigative journalism to say, no, actually there's a much closer connection. Like, here's a Russian oligarch who is directly giving money to Putin or the Russian government, or here is a Russian official who is directly employed and working for the Russian government that is tied to Atomic Heart. So, weird to get it on the streaming things, and almost certainly Ukraine asking these people to not do that is not going to have it occur, and it's more of a publicity stunt than anything. If the US government or any government wanted to embargo and ban the sale of atomic heart, the governments really should do that, not companies. Like, it is just yet another example of governments, in this case the Ukrainian government, admitting that it's weaker than Microsoft, Sony, and PlayStation and has less authority and less power, and that we are just moving to late stage corporatocracies where the corporations are the governments and have more power than the governments, and we really shouldn't let that happen. There's no constitution that is enforceable or even promised by corporatocracies, so it would very quickly eat people's individual rights. For instance, the individual right to purchase and play a game you want to play, like Atomic Heart, would go away very quickly. Specifically for Atomic Heart, if it was not available for sale for a while, and then they worked on some of the bugs on the game, or some of the polish in the game. I don't even think the game's buggy. That's the wrong phrase. I take that back. If they just polished the game, worked on some of the translation to English, got rid of some of the bullet sponginess, fixed some of the gameplay mechanics with infinite respawning, you could probably re-release Atomic Heart in 6 months, and it would be a lot better of a product. And I suspect even now, if nothing happens, there probably will be patches or mods out there that would make Atomic Heart a better product. It's for very different reasons, but in a lot of ways the push to not play Atomic Heart really just feels like an echo of the push to not play Hogwarts Legacy, which in the end it's just more and more people who don't feel like they really are that much of gamers telling gamers they don't have the right to find their own enjoyment in life, or try and find their own enjoyment in life, because something else is more important. And honestly, that mentality existed almost since day one in video games. Like, I definitely recall playing games on the NES and people pushing the idea and ranting and raving that the kids should be out playing baseball, not playing video games. People should go out and climb trees, or people should be out, you should be doing your homework and enjoying that homework, or you should be reading a book and enjoying a book. And like, all of those arguments really are just people pushing their own personal likes or opinions on other people, when really people should probably have a little bit more respect for people's own need for entertainment and enjoyment, and whether, if you like it, like, at a certain point, if it doesn't hurt other people and it makes you happy, do it. There is maybe an argument for addictive drugs, that you shouldn't do heroin if it makes you happy, because it probably doesn't make you happy on the average, and it is physically harming yourself. But yeah, there definitely is a saying, if it doesn't hurt anybody, then don't worry about it. And I am glad that most adults and most parents these days are far more in that category, about like, oh, I don't care if this kid is playing Roblox or Among Us or Minecraft, even if I don't like it, it's not hurting anybody. Yeah. So here's their official announcement with the podcast. In no way would I start to waste time listening to this podcast at the moment. I will make that statement. Very possibly I will get so bored and so desperate that I do start listening to this podcast, but I'm going to put my foot down and say no, I don't think so. Each of these named characters here, I don't know if these are even the people who have been writing the articles, because it's not like, at least with my ad blocking, I'm not seeing credits as far as who gets the headline or byline from these articles. I guess what we could do as an experiment there is, let's just see. Andy Robinson here posted this, and Andy Robinson is one of the persons on the podcast. Who's Andy Robinson? I have no idea, but I would suspect it's the guy in the middle if I was to guess. And this really goes to show just how horrific Video Games Chronicles is, with a whole bunch of other garbage visually when I don't have the cosmetic filters enabled, compared to a nice clean article here this way, which there's still room for improvement, certainly, as far as cosmetic filters. If I could get this gray to go away, that would be great. If I could get this to center the text a little bit better, that would be great. A new Nintendo Switch Mario bundle will be reportedly include a movie bonus. It's claimed that Mario Odyssey bundle will launch in March. That would be very interesting, certainly, if they're selling a Switch with like Mario Odyssey built in, which you probably should already be selling a bundle with Mario Odyssey built in, but also 2 tickets to the Mario movie. If that was the case, though, like, you could only really sell that for a short time before the Mario movie almost certainly would be out of theaters. I doubt the Mario movie is just going to be in theaters for 6 weeks to 6 months. Or perhaps it is going to sell an actual digital code to download the Mario movie directly to the Switch and stream it off the Switch, which would look horrible. Otherwise, it would have to be a DVD or Blu-ray of the Mario movie, which that doesn't make any sense. What they're saying is it would be something related to the Super Mario Brothers movies. So it could be something as simple as a poster or a t-shirt. I bet it's not even something fabric. I wouldn't be surprised if it is just a poster or a t-shirt or something. No, not a t-shirt. A poster or pencil board or something like that. Something really small and insignificant. Something that could be somewhat related to the Mario movie, but could also be totally acceptable to get 6 months later when the Mario movie is not available in theaters and still not quite available to purchase on DVD. Moving on, PlayStation State of Play returns this week with a PSVR 2 and Suicide Squad reveals, which that doesn't sound like quite enough for a State of Play, but we'll see if they announce anything else. Xbox has announced plans to also bring its PC games to NVIDIA GeForce Now. I think this is basically all of their games. Call of Duty will also come to NVIDIA's cloud gaming service if Xbox acquires Activision Blizzard. I think very possibly this announcement may have been agreed upon a long time ago, and it was just a matter of NVIDIA GeForce Now being able to smoothly play all of the PC games that Xbox has, or at least somewhat smoothly play them. Or it could have been that NVIDIA GeForce Now could have always smoothly played all the Xbox PC games, and they just realized that and negotiated that. It's very possible this deal wouldn't have been made if Microsoft wasn't trying to acquire Activision Blizzard. I still don't really think NVIDIA's GeForce Now as a service is particularly that good. Because you are getting this streaming service for PC, and basically only for PC, because your PC you're playing on like a laptop or something and you can't actually handle playing it locally, which that is definitely not the way I would see you should play PC games. Anyways, at least the streaming service on Switch makes some sense for the cloud gaming there, because you have a cheap product that is portable. But in PC gaming, I can't recommend anybody buy a cheap, underpowered laptop. You should probably not even buy a gaming laptop. You should have a desktop that you can upgrade over time, put in new RAM, add more RAM, add a stronger graphics card, potentially add more hard drive space, add a faster SSD. Having the ability to just upgrade over time is really, really helpful. Whereas if you have GeForce Now, you're just paying a monthly service fee, I assume, and that's draining your funds to potentially buy a new computer because you're paying a service. Moving on. Man, I'm losing momentum here. PlayStation has a 70% share of the global console market versus Xbox's 30% share, Microsoft claims. It also says it's still hopeful of reaching a Call of Duty deal with Sony should it buy Activision. It's an interesting argument to make. They're saying globally it's about 70-30. In Japan it's 96% to 4%. With Japan in particular, Sony being in Japan, it's worth mentioning, and definitely it shows that Xbox really has not gotten anywhere. I'm surprised that's even 4%. The 70-30 globally, I think that really highlights how blind I've personally been as far as just the popularity of the Xbox. I would have thought the Xbox in total was much closer to 50-50. But also, admittedly, I never had a PlayStation 1 or PlayStation 2. So if I had a PlayStation 1 or PlayStation 2, I probably would then have enough momentum and nostalgia to have jumped to a PlayStation 3 instead of getting an Xbox 360 when I did get an Xbox 360. And then that would have probably given me enough momentum to still buy PlayStation 4s or PlayStation 5s. Also, I suppose if they're fudging the numbers and saying from the entire lifetime of Xbox to the entire lifetime of PlayStations, almost certainly that 70% share would make sense then if you're counting every PlayStation 1 and PlayStation 2 sold compared to every Xbox original that was sold. I definitely came to the Xbox 360 from a different angle in that I was playing Nintendo consoles and then kind of not playing anything for a long time, then got an Xbox 360, and then played a lot of an Xbox 360, but then went to PC gaming and never got anything past Xbox. I would potentially get an Xbox Series X if it was cheap, just so I had a Blu-ray player, but I probably wouldn't play any games on it because there aren't any real console exclusives on Xbox, and the console exclusives definitely are the only number one reason, or the only reason I would get a PlayStation 5 instead of an Xbox Series X, which I probably should get a PlayStation 5 if I just want a Blu-ray player, because there would be console exclusives. And even in the days when I was playing the Xbox 360, when I did get a PS3, there were exclusives that I did try to play, 3 or 4 of them, like Heavenly Sword, that those games have just never come to PC, and they've never come to Xbox. But undeniably, if these numbers are even slightly accurate as far as the 70-30%, it is a big number. Only made bigger when he says in Europe it's actually an 80% share. Now, perhaps what he's doing to fudge the numbers is he's saying that everybody buys a PlayStation 4 or a PlayStation first, and then Xbox is the second console. Uh, but even those numbers would be really big. That February's PlayStation Plus game catalog and classic titles are now available. It includes Horizon Forbidden West, Resident Evil 7, Scarlet Nexus, Borderlands 3, and Taken. We are getting into a weird situation where the last of the few good games that were released last year are coming out as PlayStation Plus Essential games or Xbox Games Pass games, and now they're going to run into a bit of a gap where there won't be any good games to release in the next few months. And we really haven't had a good experience since the beginning of the year as far as games that are good. And like, there was some pretty hyped games, but none of them have turned out to be well received. Atomic Heart being one of them. Moving on, Bethesda has announced a March release for a top-down mobile shooter called Mighty Doom, which I guess this is a spin-off Doom game. Can't click on the video. Yeah, there might be a decent idea here. It almost has a Wonderful 101 feel visually, and since it is just going to be a top-down game, I don't know if having this kind of cover art really makes the most sense, since that's probably not even going to be what it looks like from the top down. Introducing the all-new mini Slayer set in the animated Doom universe. So just getting fairly far away from the Doom reboot animation style and fairly far away from the original Doom game, which is probably a mistake to get away from the original Doom. How many different types of Doom Slayers do we want? We probably only want one Doom Slayer. This is a blatant admission by Rovio, which is probably one of the worst game companies out there, in that they have they're delisting the original Angry Birds game because it is negatively impacting its other games. This is the second time Rovio's removed the games from the app stores. And what they mean by this is all the new Angry Birds game have microtransactions and live service nonsense in them, and nobody wants to play those new games. They just want the original version of the game. And so instead of making better games now, in this digital world where you own nothing and your ability to purchase something is not a guaranteed right in the sense that you can't just go back and get a used copy of Angry Birds from somebody else and buy it used, and you can't easily install a game like this on your new hardware. So yeah, this is incredibly slimy and very bad for the historical preservation of games. And there's just like no gamer I think is going to say, oh, I agree with the idea that you should remove old games to push people to buy their new games. This is definitely taking a stick approach instead of a carrot approach. Meanwhile, Rovio, as the owners of Angry Birds, has made nothing new and nothing interesting in a very long time. They've spent a ton of time promoting Angry Birds while making the games worse. They really just expected Angry Birds to be the next Minions, or even before Minions, the next Mario game, and it just never was going to be that. They should really have just be satisfied with the success they have now and be done with it. I can see them even patching the original game so that it has ads for the other games, the newer games. They probably have already done that, but delisting it is just a real slap in the face. I imagine people that already have this game can still install it. But yeah, I'm very glad we don't see anything like that happen on a major scale on Steam. If all of a sudden we started to see massive amounts of games from publishers being delisted, it would become a major point of contention, certainly a point of frustration. Like if, for instance, Ubisoft or EA started delisting all of their old games on Steam every time there was a new game from Ubisoft and EA, people would be very upset about that. And we have seen that in the past in small scales, certainly. But if it was just the standard practice, it would be super annoying. And yeah, Rovio is absolutely the worst company to potentially do something like this because their new product is just not that good. Let's move on. The Xbox Game Pass Friends and Family plan has been added to six more countries. Until now, the service has only been available in Ireland and Colombia. What are these 6 new countries? Let's see. New Zealand, South Africa, Chile, Hungary, Israel, Sweden. Still no word if it's coming to larger markets like the North America or the UK. So noticeably, all the countries that they are bringing it to are fairly small countries that potentially wouldn't spend extra money to give Xbox Game Passes to several different people in several different houses. Not sure how many accounts you really get with the Friends and Family plan. And inherently, with even like the Netflix password sharing issue, there's just this danger that they would put something out like this and then they take it away later. Although in the case of Netflix password sharing, they never really wrote down a plan or a offering that said you could share Netflix passwords. They just let people do it. Costs £21, £22 a month as opposed to £12 per month. So it would be about $25 in the United States. I don't know how many. Four other players. Yeah, there it is. Allows Xbox Game Pass Ultimate subscribers to share their subscription with up to 4 other players. Which, even amongst a large family, that's probably not quite enough. If you're going to have, say, a father and 3 kids playing, or a father and mother and 2 kids playing, it's very easy to leave somebody out, even with 4 other players. You very well may need 2 friends and family plans at that point. At a certain point, if you could make up to, say, 5 kids accounts for free on Xbox Game Pass Ultimate, that would be helpful. Although maybe it doesn't really matter too, because if one account on an Xbox has Game Pass Ultimate and then the other 3 accounts are just kids accounts or free accounts for Xbox Game Live, they may still be able to play as the 2nd, 3rd, 4th player. So sharing 4 profiles to do Xbox Game Ultimate may literally be, you would need 4 Xboxes, actual hardware, for that to matter. And at that point, that seems fairly reasonable. Because, yeah, 4 different Xbox hardwares in 4 different houses with potentially everybody playing a 4-player game, and so each of those houses had 1 person on the friends and family plans and then 3 other profiles that were just on the free basic plan. You're potentially saying 16 people could all play at the same time at a maximum. More realistically, it would probably be closer to 4 to 8 people playing at the same time. Moving on, Resident Evil 4 Remake's VR mode has started development and will be a free DLC for the PlayStation VR 2. Capcom has implied the mode won't be ready in time for the game's release. I am definitely not concerned at all about PlayStation 4 Remake's VR elements. My only concern would be that they spent resources making a VR mode and somehow it is proven that made the Resident Evil 4 Remake worse. Which, we don't even have a guarantee that the Resident Evil 4 Remake will be worse. The hope is that it's great and as close to perfect as you can, while also admitting that they definitely have made some changes and made some decisions that not everybody is going to be super happy with. If it gets, honestly, even 90% of the way there as a remake, I think most people will be overwhelmingly happy with it. You could put in a mod, certainly, to change the appearance of Chris back to the way he looked before. You can put a mod to put Ashley back to the way she looked before. So people that just want those nostalgic visuals, or something closer to those nostalgic visuals, could probably be suited by a mod fairly well. Moving on, Forza Horizon 5's second expansion is being revealed this week, so that's just an announcement for an announcement. Apparently, yet another Xbox Series XS controller has been leaked. Velocity Green this time. Seems to me like they are doing this on purpose, which, in all fairness, leaking out the announcement for a new controller is probably the only way you're going to get 2 articles written about your controller anyways, because it's incredibly boring to say, hey, we have a controller that works exactly the same and just has a different color palette on it. Elden Ring has sold 20 million copies worldwide, according to Bandai Namco, which I don't know if you really need to say that, because that does imply that they're being dishonest or that you don't trust them fully. I don't see, particularly in the headline, the necessary a need to say it like that. Almost any other headline would just say Elden Ring has sold 20 million copies worldwide. And I guess Elden Ring is yet another game that perhaps in part they were trying to cancel. A very, very small group of people, I think, were probably trying to cancel just because the George R.R. Martin wrote on it. Although I don't think too many people really hate George R.R. Martin for him doing anything cancelable, as much as they just hate him for not finishing the Song and Ice of Fire book series. Let's see, in Nintendo Direct next month will reveal the final Super Mario Bros. Movie trailer, so yet another announcement for announcement, and they're showing us Mario Kart images when it doesn't seem like there's anything here that has anything to do with Mario Kart. Which, yeah, just another example of Video Games Chronicle just desperate to find a screenshot, even if it doesn't match. It looks like the Super Mario Bros. Movie will no longer debut in March in Europe. The release date has been rescheduled to April in various countries. I would think if you're going to release it, you would try and release it somewhat in the same time frame. So I wouldn't be surprised if it gets pushed back in the United States also. But then again, maybe there's just some anti-piracy thought going on here. A Japanese company going, oh, they're going to bootleg the Mario movie, so let's put it out in the United States early and trying to get as many ticket sales as possible. I wonder if Nintendo really would have that much influence on the release date, though. Japan, you can see here, is the 28th, so they definitely are limiting Japan's time to even later, and even the release dates here were somewhat staggered in days, but nowhere as much as Japan is staggered from April 5th, April 6th. Moving on, Ori, and the Ori developer says, the Ori developer named Moon says its next game could make or break the studio. The company is aiming to revolutionize the action RPG genre. I totally agree with that, honestly, because I think the two Ori games that were made were fine, but not particularly amazing. They didn't really catch people's attention with the second Ori game, it felt like, as much as they did with the first Ori game. And they really should have made a revolutionizing new game of some sort as their second game, instead of just making a quick follow-up to the first Ori game. It is also, if I recall correctly, very much a case that Microsoft was giving support or funding to Moon to make the two Ori games, and very possibly they aren't getting that same amount of support and funding, and that they're being treated like a big boy company now that actually has to make a game that succeeds. I found the Ori games a little too difficult, so I wouldn't be surprised if this action RPG game is a little too difficult, and I wouldn't be surprised if it does fail just because it's an action RPG game, even if it was a near perfect action RPG game, and then that would be the end of Moon. There doesn't, so far as I've seen, seem to be a nice pattern or way to take a successful kind of indie game, single A game company that has one success under their belt, and even if it's super popular, doesn't seem like there's a good way to turn that from that single A type company to a double A company to a triple A company. Binding of Isaac, kind of a great example of that, like super popular series, but that eventually they formed Team Nicholas as a company, but there's still not really a step for Nicholas to make a new kind of game that's not connected to Binding of Isaac and have it succeed at all. You pigeonhole yourself effectively with your first success. You pigeonhole yourself into that level of type of game development and that type of game. That's what people expect from your company once you make it. Very possibly it makes a lot of sense to just form a new company, form a new team if you're a good single programmer who made like Ori. Instead of making Moon and making more Ori, it makes a lot of sense to potentially say Moon will make one more Ori game, then we're going to make a whole nother company with a whole nother team and start all over again and bring in some new blood to do something completely different. Now, you don't have to really start a new company to do that. Moon could bring in another indie developer, and it's surprising you don't have more companies like that where you're just bringing in the new talent. But I guess that's probably because there's so much cronyism in video games. Because if I was a video game company and I saw somebody made Super Meat Boy or Fez or Binding of Isaac, which some of that is the same person with Super Meat Boy, I would try to hire those people and say, we want to bring you in and give you your own team and give you your own support. And maybe that's what publishers do, but I could see the idea of, we don't want to just be a publisher that takes all the money. We want to be a company that builds more people into it. I've seen Double Fine kind of make an argument that they tried to do some of that. Cyan, the makers of Myst, making an argument that the new kids who are making the new games are the focus, and the old people who made Myst decades earlier can't really be the focus. But with the example of Double Fine, you do get some more variety, like Costume Quest on top of Psychonauts and Brutal Legend. But honestly, if I was to think about who I would hire right now, I probably would want the paper please guy. If you could bring him in, give him a team. Definitely not the Yandere simulator guy. They tried that basically with the Yandere simulator guy, and it didn't work because he was too much of a control freak. The Baba's You team, certainly try to bring them in. And it wouldn't just be one person, potentially hiring entire teams and trying to do soft mergers would make a lot of sense for some of these smaller companies. If I could bring in like Shift Up from Korea, the makers of Destiny Child, there might be an argument to doing that, even though they're already doing business with Line Games and Tencent, so they've already made their own kind of contracts. It'd also be weird to bring in a Korean team when almost certainly every other team would be North American, United States teams. But yeah, you could certainly find some Korean game developers. You could find some mobile game developers. You could find what is somewhat successful and bring them in. Like the maker of that game, Haiti. Bring him in, give him more support. He could probably make a decent game around that character that's a little less brutal. Moving on, I talked about this before. Ukraine's government wants the quote toxic atomic heart pulled from sale over Russia links. The game was released for PC and consoles this week. I'm not sure what they mean is specifically toxic. This is one of those things where if they gave exact examples, that would be great and make a much better argument, other than I imagine Ukraine's government pushes a lot of people to stop buying anything that was made by any Russian company whatsoever. There was a hack, and this isn't video game related, of Turkey's TV station, and it was just like the second time it's happened, where the people in Turkey don't like the theocracy and the people in charge of Turkey, and so they hacked the TV station and were telling people to take all their money out of the banks to cause the economy to crash and have a higher chance of a revolution happening in Turkey. Yet another revolution happened in Turkey. I think there's already been at least one in the past 100 years. But yeah, exact examples would be really helpful. I hate the phrase toxic because it means absolutely nothing. The game features Soviet and Russian military themes, but it doesn't really highlight them in a positive way. If anything, it's closer to parodying them, and it's parodying a Russia that, much like Bioshock, got a magical resource that let them become a lot more technologically advanced earlier in their timeline. But outside of the first little cutscene, you very quickly find that it's the same old Soviet Union Russian negative aspects. Let's see, it's become a subject of controversy over its ties to Russia, including claims that the Russian government stands to benefit financially from the release due to the majority ownership of investors of the game. Which, I mean, the claims, as far as I can get from that, is yes, they would be paying taxes in Russia. Which, yeah. There are games made in lots of countries that would be paying It's also potentially worth mentioning that there's rumors that they're going to try and inscript even more people in Russia, younger people, college age kids, into the war, and just do a draft, which, yeah, I don't think the Russians would be happy about that. trying to read here to see if there's anything here. Let's see, here there's an argument. We're urging limiting of distribution of this games in other countries due to its toxicity, potential data collection of users, and potential use of money raised from game purchases to conduct a war against Ukraine. Like, it seems like this is just no evidence to any of that. Like, if somebody had hacked Atomic Heart and said that, oh, they're doing data collection when playing the game, that might be something, but I don't know what kind of data collection really could do unless there was an actual Trojan or virus in the game, and pretty much it would have to be on the PC version of the game. They're just going to get statistics as far as just how many people bought the game, how much you're playing the game, how many times you jumped, how many times you used a certain gun, things that would just help them improve the game. That's not real important or private data being collected. It's very general statistics. Toxicity, again, just a word being thrown out without any examples. And then, yeah, money being raised, I think literally just means people, shareholders, might be Russian. And honestly, if we're going to just have this anti-Russian mentality like it was in World War II, in which the United States citizens hated all Asians, even the ones that weren't from Japan, and created internment camps eventually, but also straight up was just not doing business with the Asians. Like, if you're going to do that, though, it really should just be embargoes, just the governments themselves doing an embargo. It would be a better story, frankly, if Ukraine said Atomic Heart is banned from being purchased in Ukraine. Like, at the very least, then you would say, well, Ukraine bans Atomic Heart and asks other governments to ban it too. Instead, we have a situation here where they're asking other countries to do something that they seemingly didn't even do for themselves. Not that you likely could buy Atomic Heart in Ukraine or buy much of anything in Ukraine at the moment anyways. So it would be a kind of just matter of fact. It would be a matter of show, I guess, more than anything. But they should take that first step. But yeah, this is the kinds of articles I totally hate, when they throw out words and don't have any examples at all. Like, particularly because this article is fairly long, and I'm looking here and reading it a lot more than how I usually do, which I will usually just skim the entire articles, but I'm actually looking for points of facts or evidence here, and there just isn't anything there. So now I've wasted my time reading an article to only read fluff and baseless accusations, as far as I can tell, for no reason. And I have to say, don't let any of this negativity color your decision to play or purchase Atomic Heart. Play or don't play Atomic Heart based on actual reviews from actual people who have played the game, not people who are going to try and pretend like they're reviewing the game but only played it for the first 20 minutes so then they could rant against Russia. We don't need that kind of jingoism. At some point, Russia will probably be, or whatever Russia is in the future, will probably be on the same sides of everybody else in the world. And we just don't need to create yet another generation of people that hate all Russians for no good reason, and hate all Russian citizens for no good reasons, when your hate should be better directed perhaps directly at Putin or oligarchs in Russia. Like, the fallout from World War II and the anti-Japanese hate still exists even today in the United States. and around the world. The anti-German, just hating Germans from World War II, mostly is gone at this point, but there's still a little bit of that too. We just don't need to instill lifelong prejudices and hate against peoples in particular instead of against governments. We need to be more logical about it. Hate it in a lot of ways. Hate the action, hate the system, hate the government. Don't hate the people. Don't create this feeling to hate the people. I definitely don't want to spend the rest of my life avoiding anything that looks like it might be Soviet Union and Russian, because there's some very good visual and thematic settings you can do around that kind of Soviet Union Russian propaganda, and it is a good setting for a lot of stories. Moving on, the Half-Life Ray Trace mod has been released, which, okay, can we play this? At a certain level, even if you are having ray tracing and it's giving you decent shadow work, it's going to only be doing ray tracing against a very, very old game with very ugly textures you can see on the wall and very low polygons. The low number of polygons is going to reduce the amount of rays you actually need to trace in the first place. And honestly, ray tracing in a screenshot like this, you're seeing a little bit of shadow here, some overall shadow over here, some secondary shadowing maybe over here, but that's pretty much it. The only thing that even looks slightly interesting is the gun, and as far as shadowing there's maybe a little bit of shadows here, maybe a little bit of shadows on this side, but that is not an impressive image at all. Yeah, same thing here, you have like a shadowing here, but this water is not going to be reflective in the first place, so there won't be any ray tracing reflections. Almost certainly none of these surfaces have any special reflective coating properties to them. You can see there's some shadows here. You can see there's a shadow here from the helicopter, some shadows there. But that definitely does not look that good. Apparently it's from a creator who also made a well-received Doom and Quake ray tracing, which perhaps in play the ray tracing does a lot better of a job than it does in screenshots, but if anything, I am generally just unimpressed by ray tracing overall, because in all fairness, most of the games that have used ray tracing have then had incredibly poor performance, and they've only taken it maybe a step or two above in quality a game that has just built-in light mapping and some of the other tricks that they were doing before ray tracing. Eventually, I do think ray tracing will become just a standard, and it will take all games up a step, very possibly only one step in quality. And eventually it will be so optimized that it won't hit your performance that much. But as a sales pitch, ray tracing was oversold and underutilized. Moving on to the Gematsu articles, which, man, we're 2 hours and 30 minutes in, and I'm just now getting to the Gematsu articles. NCSoft announces multiplayer battle action game Battle Crush for Switch, PC, and mobile. We're going to have to just burn through all these very quickly. Level 5 Vision 2023 Tsunami live stream set for March 9th. Level 5 is a maker of what? Zuma 11, Deca Police, Fantasy Life, Megaton Musashi, New World Steam, New World of Steam. Yeah. So yeah, several games there that they may have something new to say about, or maybe even some new games to announce. A game called Meg's Monsters launches on March 2nd for the Xbox Series, Xbox One, Switch, and PC. Noticeably not the PlayStation series of games. It looks like it's an RPG adventure that's possibly closer to a 16-bit than an 8-bit resolution. Doesn't particularly look amazing, and I just don't have time to look at these trailers. I do kind of like the idea of you start off with a Western like name as far as Meg's Monsters. It rhymes, and then you start off with the idea of the name, and then you make a game. And then you have here a fairly young looking kid, so it does kind of feel like it's more of a kid friendly game with some different types of monster characters. So it does definitely feel like it's going in a different direction than I'd say most JRPGs go, where it's just medieval fantasy characters in a JRPG. Taken 8 has the Kazuya Mishima gameplay. Dragon Ball Z Kakarot DLC Chaos at the World Tournament has been announced, which, yeah, I guess they're just continuously going through parts of the storyline. I assume that Chaos at the World Tournament is one of the earlier World Tournaments in the game and not some new World Tournament. It's set at the 23rd World Tournament, and I guess if you were a deeper Dragon Ball fan, you'd perhaps know what that means. The battle between a grown-up Goku and Ma Jr., where the fate of the world is about to begin. Yeah. I don't even know who Ma Jr. is. Moving on, Famitsu has its review scores for issue 1786, this time giving Kirby Return to Dreamland a 35 out of 40, so people very happy with that. Like a Dragon Ishin getting 34 out of 40, not quite as happy with that. And then Octopath Traveler getting 9s across the board for 36 out of 40. So people more happy with that. So a pretty great week for games. I don't know really though if I would want to play Return to Dreamland Deluxe unless I was a super fan of Kirby, and I just don't think I am. I've missed more Kirby games than I've played. I've played maybe 2, the first one and Kirby in the Forgotten World, which is a totally different type of game. A survival horror game called Organ Quarter is coming to PlayStation VR 2 this summer, which was funny because this is like the first new PlayStation VR 2 game I've seen that's even caught my attention. Let's see what it looks like. Well, it is blurred at the moment somewhat, but even at that, it looks like it's a pretty pixely, low resolution horror game that, while being in VR, still dangerously feels like it's a little too close to just being an asset flip horror game. And because it has this whole weird pixely element to it, it's not benefiting from other PC asset flip horror games polish. We also have The Last Labyrinth coming to PlayStation 5 and PSVR 2 on March 22nd alongside a monitor mode update. Save data between the virtual reality and monitor modes is shared. Last Labyrinth was very much a tech demo for VR, and now they're re-releasing it. I can only assume that the monitor mode is an attempt to get a few more sales by removing the VR element. That being said, it is, let's see, yeah, it is available on Steam in the monitor mode. Well, that didn't work. Monitor mode is also coming to Steam, which I was somewhat interested in this game, but it probably would have to get the monitor mode update, get a decent amount of new in the last 90-day type reviews and be on sale before I would consider it. Because at the core, the concept here was for it to make a VR game. And to get around that, you're controlling this like green-haired anime girl while the character you're playing is like tied into this wheelchair. So you're telling her what to do. So in VR, you really weren't even doing that much, it felt like. So now if you introduce a monitor mode, then I assume it gets rid of the VR elements and doesn't change anything else in the game. Moving on, Tiny Troopers Global Ops launches March 19th, seemingly for everything. Looks like a mobile arcade type shooter. A Pokemon Present is set for February 27th, featuring 20 minutes of Pokemon news, which that's really not that much. Xbox Game Pass adds Soul Hackers 2, Will Long Fallen Dynasty, and more in late February to early March. We had already talked about this. Soul Hackers 2 is actually part of the Shin Megami Tensei series. Atomic Heart is available today. So even if Microsoft did stop selling the game, a lot of people would have already downloaded and potentially played it. I would definitely say download the game now just in case there's a chance of it going away. Yeah, nothing else really to say. The Soul Hackers in the same Persona / Shin Megami Tensei universe or multiverse. Creed Rise to Glory Championship Edition launches April 4th. This is for the PlayStation VR 2. It seems to me like they are tagging everything PlayStation 5 on Gamatsu if it is a PlayStation VR 2 game, which is definitely going to create some confusion. But generally, when you are tagging things, you want to use as many tags as possible, even if that does create confusion. In this case, they really should have made a new tag that said PlayStation VR 2 plus PS5 instead of having two separate tags. Because if I click PlayStation 5, I'm assuming I'm only getting news for games that play on the PlayStation 5 alone. NIS, or Nippon Ichi Software, announces Superpowers X Academy RPG Exetris for the PS5, PS4, and Switch. Looks very colorful. Seems to be a collection of anime kids and then a heck of a lot of numbers. If anything, it seems like it might be half visual novel, half management sim. Yeah, it's almost like a daughter rising simulator, except for this time you're raising superheroes. Although it seems like there's some monster elements and potentially some grindy RPG elements too. I imagine though you might grind on the same enemies over and over again multiple times. And then you'll get a few interesting CG images like this, but probably not that many. I don't know why you would need two tubes to go into a oxygen mask. That seems redundant. I guess maybe that's the reason though, is two redundant tubes. Let's see. So yeah, they're showing off each of these kids, or these characters, and they all look a little boring in their same color palette school outfits. You would kind of hope that they would transform into a more colorful outfit later on, superhero outfit. Moving on, Fura announces an RPG called Cry Machina for PS5, PS4, and Switch. So, yep, Seems to me like there still are some Japanese companies that want to only sell for PC and PlayStation. Another Fisherman's Tale has been announced for PlayStation VR 2, Quest 2, and PC VR. It just looks like a sequel to a Fisherman's Tale, which I don't remember as a game. It looks weird. Detachable limbs for VR. It's not the craziest of ideas, but the way it's being depicted is pretty crazy. Gorn is coming to PlayStation VR 2 on March 16th. That's another PlayStation VR 1 game. So just everything that came to PlayStation VR is now being sold to you for VR 2. Knock is coming to the PlayStation VR 2 in March. Very much games like Gorn should have been free. Runner for PSVR 2 launches February 22nd. In a lot of ways, there is a very good argument to just burn through those announcements very quickly, because I think very few people are going to end up playing PlayStation VR 2 games. Fairy Fencer F Refrain Chord launches April 25th in the West, and the massive amount of collector's box limited edition stuff if you wanted to go that direction. I assume this is a strategy RPG? No, I actually was assuming it was just a action JRPG, but whatever. Don't really have time to watch the opening movie, and frankly I would like to see a different kind of trailer than the opening movie anyways. State of Play set for February 23rd, featuring third-party reveals, PlayStation VR 2 games, and Suicide Squad killed the Justice League. In comparison to the 20-minute Pokemon announcement, this is going to be 45 minutes, and they've promised 16 titles, which definitely seems like a lot more than the first part of this announcement, when it seemed like they literally were only going to be talking about PlayStation VR 2 games and Suicide Squad. That's much better of a promise. 16 titles. 45 minutes may be a little long, but not that long. Doki Doki Literature Club Plus sales have topped 1 million. This was first launched on June 2021. This is the visual novel that feels like it's just a regular dating romance visual novel, and then has a twist that gets revealed fairly quickly, and people really enjoyed it for the twist, or in particular I think they enjoyed it for parodying visual novels in a way for people who probably don't play visual novels, and being done by a more Western company. Or at the very least, maybe it was just doing something a little bit different because it was a Western company. The game I Expect You to Die 3, Cog in the Machine, has been announced for PC, VR, and Quest. Have all the games in the I Expect You to Die series been VR games? Possibly. It's a puzzle game of some sort. A game called Cozy Grove has physical editions being announced for the PS5 and Switch. The EVO lineup for 2023 has been announced. So let's see, we have Street Fighter, is it 6 or 8? Guilty Gear Survive or Strive, Dragon Ball FighterZ, Tekken 7, King of Fighters 15, Melty Blood, Mortal Kombat 2 Ultimate, and Ultimate Marvel vs. Capcom 3. Mortal Kombat 11, Street Fighter 6. Noticeably, no Smash Brothers because Nintendo won't let them have Smash Brothers. There's some reoccurring people, but a lot of these are just second appearances, third appearances. Dragon Ball FighterZ is fourth appearance. Street Fighter 6 is first appearance. Noticeably, no Street Fighter 5 at that point. And if I was running EVO, I imagine you would want Street Fighter 5 to still be a thing while you're still doing Street Fighter 6. Tekken 7, 7th time appearing, so perhaps there should be a newer Tekken. And then Marvel vs. Capcom 3 is 7th appearance. Again, both of those games probably don't have any newer versions. the top 8 finals has been shortened to the top 6, so it seems like they've lost a couple of games. And then Side Games will host a pre-release tournament for Grand Blue Fantasy versus Rising, which apparently is not being included for some reason. But yeah, no Nintendo fighting game here, no Smash Brothers. When that really would be a big one. Although people, from what I hear, want to play the old Smash Brothers games, not the new Smash Brothers games. And yeah, Multi-Blood, I guess, is the most weird game or of the possible names here to be included. For as many people that I've seen have tried to make fighting games and probably failed at them, they don't get the attention like the top 6 or 8 of the games. Even Dragon Ball FighterZ arguably would get more sales if they made a new Dragon Ball fighting game, but there isn't really enough of a justification there. And if you were to go down the route of fighting games, it is kind of crazy that there are at least 2 or 3 good fighting anime out there that don't have games built around them. My Hero Academia, why isn't there a fighting game out there that is good? Or they tried to make a fighting game around Kill La Kill, and that didn't work. Maybe make a fighting game around Attack on Titan, but maybe not. There's got to be other fighting games. It's funny there really isn't a sword fighting game like a Bleach fighting game. Might make some sense. There's a whole I don't know if there's anything really recent, but you could make a Digimon fighting game, certainly, and have a whole bunch of Digimon fighting each other, hand-to-hand combat. You could make a Pokemon game. Well, not a Pokemon game. You could make a Power Ranger fighting game. They did make that, and it didn't catch people's attention. It's funny there isn't a One Piece fighting game that's popular. Moving on, we already said Elden Ring shipments and digital sales have topped 20 million. 303.4 million units were sold since June 30th, 2022. A puzzle action game called Chippy and Nopo has been announced for Switch and PC. Which, okay. It looks like something. Looks like with a left and a right hat, you very possibly have to control both characters at the same time. A game called Lil Noah, Scion of Paradise has its 4th major update now available. Which... This is a game that has missed my attention, apparently. Or maybe not missed my attention. It's just the screenshot they chose didn't remind me particularly well. So they've added a very hard mode to this game. And yeah, this is one of those games that's just overwhelmingly positive, and so it's on the wish list. Personally, looking at the screenshots, I think the visuals are a little bit rough. Like the soft cell chibi characters aren't super interesting. The variety in which you see them as animated this way when doing dialogue, and then animated this way more, and then you have a menu level select, and possibly a Metroidvania type game, but they're not even selling it really like a Metroidvania game. They're more selling it like a action roguelike. Maybe that's the aspect that I'm missing here, is that this is a roguelike and you play the same areas over and over again. But then it seems like it has platforming elements too, which you wouldn't really expect, and boss fights in roguelike are a little different. So even now I don't feel like I have a full grasp on what this game is, but it doesn't matter. It's super popular. It's published by Cygames, makers of Shadowverse. So, or publisher of Shadowverse. What else has Cygames really done? Wondership Q. Interesting. It's actually developed more by Grounding. Space Channel 5. World's End Club. Alright, well. Fourth major update adds a new zipper. Adds a very hard mode. You can toggle airship facilities on and off, and there's some text adjustments. So the game is just getting better. I guess there was just room for improvement. So, speaking of room for improvement, the Good Life DLC Behind the Secret of the Rainy Woods launches March 9th. 12 new quests to further peel back the layers of Rainy Woods. I would have not believed you if you told me there was going to be any DLC for the Good Life. Like, yes, it's weird that the person who made the Good Life is the person who made the Good Life, but I did not hear any good reviews for this game, and it did feel in general just like it was a weird game. It could very well be a translation error, where the translation is just not that good. Or it could very well be that I just listened to the wrong people. But let's see. Looking on Steam, while it's not super relevant for something that came out October 15th, 2021, it's 80% positive of all-time reviews. It is on my wish list. Online right now, peak for today 4, all-time peak was 207 users. So I guess if you get this game somewhat cheap, which that is also going to be a problem, you can see it's only gone down 30% since its launch nearly 2 years ago. Like, I guess there is an argument to potentially play this. But there is definitely also an argument to not play this game just because it has a name attached to it. Like, and they're not even selling it based on the name. And I've forgotten who the name was too, so I'm teasing it. Moving on. Thunderful subsidiary Head Up Games has acquired Studio Fizbin. So I do recognize this logo, Head Up, and I've heard of Thunderful. I don't recognize the logo. The Studio Fizbin, I don't recognize. So, yeah. This is the studio behind Minute of Violence and more. I don't even know what Minute of Violence is. So we'll leave it at that. Resident Evil 4 Remake PlayStation VR 2 mode to be released as free DLC. We already talked about that. NCSoft Development MMO RPG Liberty, Throne and Liberty for the PS5, Xbox Series, and PC is going to be published by Amazon Games. Which this is, I guess, just yet another opportunity for Amazon Games to try and do something good with their name and actually be successful at something. So far, they really haven't been successful at anything. That does remind me that Netflix seemingly has cut a lot of their animation projects and budgets, and that's upset some more people. Not that there's been a ton of good animation from Netflix. Noticeably, what they announced for this month seems to have no new anime that they've licensed or made at all. Although I wouldn't really be upset if Netflix released trailers separate for the animes that they were releasing on their shows. compared to just saying what else is on there, because it is very off-putting when they say we have 5 new kids cartoons here in this section, and then 2 minutes later here's all the animes for adults that we've released. But even at that, it doesn't make a lot of sense, because the what to watch videos start off by showing high action dramas. Like, you really shouldn't be showing a trailer for You Season 2 Part 1 or Part 2, which there's a whole nonsense around the way they release things too, that I won't get into. But yeah, you shouldn't be showing a trailer for that and then 2 minutes later showing kids cartoons. Anyways, they should separate all the trailer videos into different sections. It definitely has been a case for the things that Netflix actually funded that were animated. The good ones got canceled quick. The bad ones got canceled way too late. And they really haven't had too many successes. Inside Job so far hasn't been canceled. There was a Gorillas animated movie or something that apparently got canceled, and that's what people were upset, is that you might have a Gorillas musical type show. But yeah, Netflix is just dumb. Now, inherently, I guess at any point somebody could take over Netflix and somebody new could be in charge, and they could bring back a lot of things, particularly if it's animated. It'd be a lot harder to bring back some of the live action actors after a few years, where they would have grown up or looked different or aged out of the role. You'd have to just start the whole series over again. But yeah, if I was in charge of Netflix tomorrow, I definitely would go over everything that was canceled and see what actually was popular and try and bring it back and try to evaluate things on a more generous rating scale. Because, yeah, I said I wasn't going to go into it, but apparently you have to watch an entire TV season if it is released within the first week to maybe 6 weeks, maybe 8 weeks, for them to count it as a view. Like the entire TV season, which is the exact same system they're doing with the movies, but it's a big difference between you watched an entire movie in the first week and you binged an entire season of a show that maybe you're into, maybe you're not, for them to count it as a view. And that definitely would explain why they cancel so much, is that they just don't give anything time to be watched by a reasonable fan, and it's creating a situation where everything is considered a failure, or the only things that are considered popular are things that the super fans are binging. Anyways, back to video game news. We don't have time for this. A roguelike management game called Backpack Hero launches in May for seemingly everything. Yeah. It's currently in early access on PC, which I'd like to check that out. I have about 5 more articles. Yeah, I've already seen this from Gamatsu, and then we've got everything that came out on Steam. Plus my macro broke, so we may have 2 fall list cleanups that we have to do today. Let's see. No Man's Sky Fractal update is now available. I'm a little surprised we're still getting updates to No Man's Sky, although seems to me like this may not have any actual content updated, and it may just be gyroscopic control support and VR support. So if you are playing with a VR headset or a gyroscopic controller of some sort. Let's see. Seems like there might be a little bit of content here, but some of this does seem like it's not much of anything. Selling Twitch rewards. I guess the real question to ask is No Man's Sky mostly in maintenance mode now, fixing bugs, fixes, or are they still trying to add content? Because this Utopia expedition seems to be new content, Nexus missions seem to be new content, but the vast majority of that update did seem to be mostly maintenance. Moving on, a neo-noir third-person shooter called El Paso Elsewhere launches this fall for the Xbox Series and Xbox One and PC. Okay, there might be something interesting there, or it might be nothing. And yeah, really don't have time to watch a trailer to figure out more about this. They'll almost certainly talk about it once it gets closer to an actual release date. Paradise Killer physical editions have been announced for the PlayStation 4 and 5 and Xbox Series 1 and Series and Xbox Ones. You can see much fewer collectibles than your standard Japanese limited edition, and these collectibles being not really worth it. I guess the collector's edition gets you a little bit closer to what you would see. And here's one of those boob mouse pads with a creepy head on it. I don't even know what Paradise Killer is. Some kind of open world game. See what Steam tells us about it. It's on my wish list, so I've looked at it. Oh, I vaguely recall this game. It's like this half dating game, half murder mystery game. Yeah, it's a murder mystery investigation game with just some weird looking characters. That was very well received for some reason. I think perhaps because it might have been LGBTQ+, who knows. I could be wrong about that though. This is just another great example though where you have a lot of well received reviews and you just don't do anything with your company after that. It takes so long to develop a game that, like 2 years ago, this game was released in September 4th, 2020. 3 years ago, really. And they have nothing else to show, and there's just no reason to talk about them for potentially another year or longer until they have some new game to announce. The only reason we're even talking about them now is that they incredibly late to the party are releasing physical editions of their games. And then our final Gematsu article for today says Microids is going to publish a tactical RPG for consoles and PC developed by the French studio Savage Level, due out in 2024. I don't think we have an actual name for it. Right. So then looking at the games that came out on Steam, let's burn through these as quickly as possible. I'll give that a follow. YouTube short, but not even bother to put it on the follow list just because I'm going to move very quickly. And we have 2 games with survivors in the name from Lunatic Studio and Jack Fish. It's the second one. Dream Bright might be something, so I'll give it a chance. Defending Earth doesn't look like anything. The problem here, these look like these are dice of some sort, is that there really is no guarantee of how long it's going to take me to get through games. I can try and move as fast as possible. Here we have a Digimon game that's received very positively. Now, is this the Digimon World Next Order? Is this Digimon Survive? I guess it isn't. Alright, well, definitely put that on the fall list. It feels like this might be an older game though, that's just being ported to PC, which maybe that's better than nothing. I don't recognize any of these Digidestined kids, but they could be grown-up versions of anybody. I recognize the Digimon. Like, Digimon has been kind of good about consistently sticking to some recognizable original Digimon characters. And we can see Angelmon over here showing her usual amount of skin. So, less worries of censorship there. Yeah. Unknown Pyramid. The idea of a horrific pyramid is a concept certainly that would make sense. Too bad they did such a trolly job on it. Deliria? I don't even know if that's how you pronounce Deliria. I don't even know if Deliria is really a word. Zombie Hunter. Like, pretty much anything can happen to make me lose momentum to burn through these games. And since it is Wednesday, it definitely would make sense that we would see an adult game or 2 to 5 adult games. Give this a chance today. Although also we have the weirdness in that over the weekend there really wasn't a lot of the 3D CG adult games. Like I don't think I saw any on Monday at all. I'll give that a chance. And we saw like maybe one flat 2D anime style looking game, and then we saw like 2 or 3 furry games. So it was a big win last weekend for furry games. Last weekend may have also been Valentine's Day, so perhaps it is a case where they intentionally blocked adult games from being released around Valentine's Day, which that would be incredibly anti-libertarian as a concept, in which you're not allowing adult games to sell around Valentine's Day to hurt their sales potentially, which would be the only thing I could assume then. Yeah. Last week would have been February 14th. So it's very possible they don't really line up. If anything, I might be attributing malice there that doesn't exist. In fairness, it may be a case that all the adult games rushed to release around the 14th, and then over the weekend, which would have really been the 18th and 19th or so, that would have been after Thanksgiving. Not Valentine's Day. So the lack of adult games that I'm seeing now may very well be a case that people rushed to make a Valentine's Day release, and now we're seeing the lack of games as people are now working towards their next releases. Roll Freak. I'll give this a chance. But yeah. Man, just a incredibly terrible screenshots there. My arm is a shotgun. I think we'll say no to that. So here's our first adult game. Hentai Jigsaw Puzzle Collector's Edition, Valentine's Edition, February 22nd. So again, you either can attribute malice and say that Steam and Valve actively stopped adult games from releasing around the 14th, or this game is just nearly a week late. Over a week late. 8 days late from the 14th. As for what this is just a jigsaw puzzle game with what looks like literally only 3, maybe 6 images that aren't even consistent. They're selling it for $1.69, and weirdly it's being compared to Honey Pop and Shadowverse, 2 very different games. It says it has full audio, for all 103 languages. It says it has more than 14 jigsaw puzzles to complete, which I can only assume means there's 15 jigsaw puzzles to complete. So yeah, that is definitely going to be a no in my book. Redemption Reapers here. Not doing particularly well. But I kind of want to give this a chance. Let's see what the reviews are saying. I actually like the game, but the quality of the product doesn't even come close to justify the price tag. Does not support resolutions above 1080p. At least the version did not add resolutions. So yeah, it's just a way too expensive game that is just not up to quality. Okay, I will leave this at that and not bother to make a YouTube short. This is perhaps curating too much to say, to listen to the 29 user reviews here, that of which 15 or so didn't like the game. But honestly, that's kind of the system I have to live with. And in all fairness, I would be surprised if my YouTube videos on Google YouTube are getting shown to even 29 people before the YouTube algorithm decides to stop sharing it to people. Which that is kind of the problem with the YouTube algorithm, is it really needs to shotgun blast in its first wave closer to 10,000 people before the algorithm even acts on it at all, instead of showing it to what I've heard, and who knows if any of this is ever true, is that it shows it to only a percentage of people who are notified and click the bell. It should be showing it to everybody. So let's assume that's the case. If you've clicked the bell, you would see it, the new videos then. But I'm going to give this a chance. If you haven't clicked the bell and subscribed, it shows it to a percentage of people there. And if you haven't subscribed to me at all, then it shows it to less than 100 people there. So it kind of feels like maybe you're getting 100 chances at most to catch people's attention, which really just creates a system that where the only games that possibly the only YouTube videos, not games, that get attention are the most clickbaity of all the clickbaity videos, and it then just feeds in on itself, which is exactly what we see on YouTube, is that more and more content creators have to make clickbait videos because the algorithm only rewards clickbait videos. And yeah, it's just a terrible option. Meanwhile, when you go to like the recommended feed, or when I go to my recommended feed on YouTube, it is constantly suggesting the same videos to me over and over again, and doesn't upgrade its recommendations often enough. Like, it seems like it does it maybe once every 3 or 4 hours, when ideally I'd want it to upgrade every time, or do it once every 3 or 4 hours but make 4 times as much recommendations. This might be something. Saint Maker horror visual novels story. Okay, that's an interesting twist. What happened to that game Maria's Dead? Did that come out? I guess it did. Boot and Shoot. It's an interesting title. I think I just slammed into a wall there where I ran out of things to say. Alright. Animu Jump. This is a funny animation style. You don't see this very much. It's like they're intentionally trying to have this kind of marker cheap animation style. Super Trunks Go. Might be something there. Alright, and that was that. So, again, we didn't see any adult games. And, again, either you decide that it's because adult game makers don't have anything new after they pushed everything to release around Valentine's Day, or you decide that it is probably Valve manipulating things, or very possibly even the beginning of Valve just being more or less likely to approve adult content. GameDeveloper.com articles. Thunderful acquired the Minutes of Islands developer Studio Fizbane. I don't recognize this game. It looks kind of interesting. Rovio delisting the original Angry Birds, asking players to try live titles instead. Which, yeah. If Rovio was in charge, they've just basically said they would delist other companies' games too to make people play their games. Elden Ring has sold over 20 million copies worldwide. Microsoft says Sony is, quote, hoping the future never arrives, end quote, by opposing the Activision Blizzard deal. I have no idea who this guy is, though. Probably some lawyer. Brad Smith holding 10-year contracts offered to Sony, ensuring Activision Blizzard games, including Call of Duty. So, who's Brad Smith? He is a Microsoft's vice chair and president. Which, if anything, that really highlights how Major Nelson is just so much better at selling himself, as he's not here and his absence is very much noticed. And if anything, Microsoft sending the vice chair and president definitely makes it seem like Microsoft, as a whole, wants the Activision Blizzard deal to go through. Wouldn't it be a funny twist if this acquisition happened and yet somehow Activision Blizzard became the people in charge of everything? Major Nelson somehow retires or gets put out, and then you have the CEO of Activision Blizzard staying around and being the new person in charge of all the video game companies. At a certain level, I can't help but wonder if Activision Blizzard is actively trying to convince people to quit and get rid of their employees for one reason or another, and maybe that's what Microsoft wants too, is that they just have too many people hired and it's too hard to find excuses to fire people or lay off people, so let's instead just bring in a jerk and mismanage it on purpose to reduce the numbers. I mean, that may be the way business goes going forward, with more automation and potentially artificial intelligence really changing things up, is that you'll just see more and more jobs where it's 100% the focus of management to get rid of people. You definitely see that in like union jobs, where the management basically is just hiring jerks and acting like jerks to get people to quit because they can't fire you if you don't do anything really wrong in the union job. Well, they can't easily fire you, I guess is the more accurate thing to say. They definitely have found ways to fire people. Moving on, Meta is reportedly planning to lay off more employees, which, yeah, definitely the news of the month is a bunch of tech companies trying to lay off a lot of people or succeeding at laying off a lot of people. Let's see, MiHoYo pursues legal action against Genshin Impact leakers. Leaked and legal impact is the subtitle here. So we have another lawsuit against leakers. Although going against leakers is probably a mistake compared to going against cheaters. I think most gamers can get behind legal action against cheaters. Going against leakers, not so much. Amazon Games acquired the publishing rights for NCSoft's Throne and Liberty. This is a much more interesting screenshot than the other screenshot I saw for Throne and Liberty. Let's see. Toru Okada, creator of PlayStation's logo sound, has died. Along with the PlayStation sound effect, Okada also made music for Crash Bandicoot commercials in the 90s, which is to really say he really didn't have that much connection to video games. But whatever, we should probably do obituaries for everybody that dies. If they have even the slightest connection to video games. It would get overwhelming quick if you started to do obituaries on a video game website for every person. I don't think there's much else to really say here. At age 73, I assume he just died of a age-related disease or condition. Right. And then we've got some follow list cleanup, and this glitched so very quickly. I need to burn through all this. This one's an easy decision because it's not relevant. Cleopatra's Fortune. I'll give more time. Cleo here. It's rated very positively, so that can go to the wish list. Clay Breakers. I'll give more time. Clawfish is a fishing game of some sort. It's a fishing claw machine game, which is weird. The idea that you would have a claw machine game that would actually catch real live fish. I've never seen that. That sounds a little silly, frankly, to catch a fish and then put it in a tank and then catch a new fish. Catch the fish a second time. Feels like you would just traumatize the fish multiple times for that reason. The claw fishing games are on the pier, so why not just go in the ocean and fish that way? But as far as a potential claw machine game, that's an interesting idea, so I'll put it on the wish list for that. Claude Monet. Yeah. This is a VR game, and I think we can say no to that. There is possibly a better argument to making a video game that's around one artist's collection than just making a generic museum piece, and putting it in VR makes a little bit of sense, but there needs to really be a non-VR version too for a lot of these. And it looks like they may have done some effects to change what the final product actually looks like to make it more interactive, and arguably that's changing the Mona Lisa and somewhat offensive. Let's see, 83% positive. I'll add this to the wish list. I'm not super blown away by what this is showing, but it doesn't look terrible. Clash Robot Detective is barely out, so I give it more time. Clan O'Connell. Is this a... what kind of game is this? Is it a single player game? Yes, it is. You know, this might be similar to that Triad game where you had 3 different characters. You had like an archer, a mage, and a like axe wielder or something, and you had to swap between them to solve puzzles. Yeah, I think that may very well be what this is. So it's well received. Not particularly relevant, but even the Triad game is not relevant, and Triad may not actually be the name of the game. It starts with try something. Claire de Lune. This looks interesting and kind of nicely visually polished. Story-driven puzzle adventure game set in a grounded science fiction universe, perhaps being grounded There's a problem, perhaps the price is too high. I had to walk away multiple times and forgot to quit the game. This is a short game without any trouble. You can expect roughly 4 hours. I found the puzzles very frustrating as they require key timing too precise and short window. Despite all of this, I enjoyed the story. It gets to the point about an hour or so where every time everything just right, or just you have to time everything just right or you die. Alright, so it's got frustrating timing mechanics, and as a person who is particularly not a fan of frustrating timing mechanics, I will say no to that. We really have gotten away from that idea, though, of like you've got to push a button perfectly or you die. That Prince of Persia style of gameplays. Now this one, City State 2, is going to get down to just a general question as to whether I want to play yet another city simulator, since I really failed miserably with Cities Skylines. I'm going to put this on the wish list, but I suspect I would never actually buy this for myself, and honestly, even if somebody gifted it to me, I'm not sure I'd really play it. Let's see. And overall, you know what, it's not that relevant, so I'm going to say no. Just for my own personal reason. Super Trunks Go, we just looked at. So I guess my macro didn't run run twice. I guess it just broke before it even did the cleanup. Alright. So I wanted to check over here. Like this here takes you to this page that then brings you back there. We already tried that. So yeah, there's no way to get the pop-up for the reward. And the Duel Live is here. I'm having to try and remember where the Duel Live is. So we'll start this. I'll scroll down my Twitter account. It being past midnight now, I suspect there's not going to be any new news to talk about. We had a lot of rambles today, which did bring us to a longer stream. But yeah, I only have like 4 new tweets in total here on Twitter. People seem to have pretty much just stopped talking about Twitter at this point. Elon Musk is either saying nothing or saying very little. And he's not really making too much changes. He got rid of like text messaging 2-factor authentication, which in all fairness, every company should get rid of that. It's expensive and not secure. But that's about it. He has certainly changed the face of how things are done by introducing Twitter Blue notification monthly fees, and then Facebook pushing similar ideas. Here we do have on my Twitter feed a couple of cosplayers doing Triss and Yennefer from Witcher 3, which, yep, those are some of the few safe for work cosplay images I could show. But it does point out that there is still some fandom around streaming, making those kinds of cosplay shots. There's definitely waves that happen where a new character from a new game may be popular for a short time, and then you'll see a lot of cosplayers doing that. But very few characters stick around for the long haul. The ones that do stick around for the long haul become almost like cultural touchstones or tent poles. I imagine they're very popular. Wednesday Addams being one of those tent poles. certainly. You don't get it too much, but you definitely have some of the characters from Neon Genesis Evangelion showing up every now and then. The anime assassin family, I think is the name of it, somewhat popular. Here's a story we didn't talk about. The production company that made Get Out and Megan with Blumhouse is going to start making horror games. Yep. I don't think anybody would cosplay Megan though as a character because she is supposed to be creepy, and cosplaying horror characters doesn't happen that much. Every now and then you'll have horror characters. Ada Wong from Resident Evil 4 is a lady that gets cosplayed a lot. Very few male cosplayers get their videos or pictures shown and retweeted. There are some male cosplayers, but not a lot. God of War, done both as God of War by a male cosplayer or God of War gender swapped, is somewhat popular, or was when it was coming out. I haven't seen any lately. Spider-Gwen, Spider-Man, gender swap Spider-Man, cultural thing, fairly common. Here we have some Genshin Impact cosplay going on. A lot of cosplayers are Asian and get a lot from that. But that is kind of the nature of where Twitter has gone for me, is that more and more it is just seeing cosplayers and like porn, for lack of a better term, getting retweeted. I did see something on Facebook which was surprising. On the Facebook Reels, I got suggested a picture of a woman with a baby, and the baby was trying to breastfeed on her right nipple, which was covered by a bra, whereas her left nipple the whole time was exposed, and then the baby eventually bounced his way from one nipple to the other, which definitely felt like it was skirting and cheating their way to showing off a topless lady, which, I mean, it wasn't even done particularly well lit or anything, so you're just seeing a darkened nipple that you would typically see from a pregnant lady. Like, if anything, it is the prime example of even somebody who is looking for porn not really finding much when some woman brings out a nipple to breastfeed. Lots of Star Wars cosplay still, as far as cosplay goes. Yeah, and I really don't have anything else to say, so it's just kind of wasting time. Censored Gaming put out a tweet here talking about the movie Brain Dead and how it got special artwork in Japan, but I don't think this really has anything to do with video games, even if this artwork was done by a video game animator who also worked on video games. And honestly, I don't think this is something that you could particularly call censorship, as much as it's a case that the Japanese artwork that came out after the release of the Western VHS tape is more gory. Like, if anything, it's reverse censorship in that they went more bloody and darker in the depiction here. And it's kind of hard to tell, but there's like an axe, and her knee is bent, and she's like all tied to this chair, and there's this grotesque bloated baby, and there's blood coming out of this nurse's mouth, and blood coming out of the mouth of the baby, and then there's a like scalpel or scissors, I think it's scissors, coming stabbing this one, bleeding here too. Like, whereas the original Brain Dead is just kind of this bloated face and then two people, this is just like a rough screenshot of a VHS image. So yeah, not really censorship in that case as far as I can tell. What happened there? I thought I had a duel live, but apparently I didn't. Yeah, I have no idea what happened there. Alright, well, I guess I don't have anything else to say. And, yeah, I could continuously scroll down my Twitter feed and just talk about what I see there. Still really am not any closer to moving to another service though. If they had some kind of like website that could bring Mastodon servers all together, maybe I would consider that, but here we have somebody just came on the chat as I'm about to wrap up saying, I see you got gems there. Yep, I do have some gems doing the daily quests, not anywhere as much as I would like, considering how you can never have too many gems. Unfortunately, that's it for the stream, so as always, I ask you to like, share, subscribe, comment, and watch every second of my videos because that helps me with YouTube. If you want to friend or follow me on any social media sites, there's a bunch of links in the description. There's also a link to Patreon, or you can friend me on Steam and get me a game off my wish list to support me further. Thank you for watching. Have a good evening.